Yun Mengli, the Qing king, the Blood King and the others led most of the king-rank warriors and some of the array mages away. Only a handful of king-rank fighters and array mages stayed behind to watch the spatial rift. There was no need for a large force. The main formation had already been laid. Once it settled, the rift would be suppressed and unlikely to expand. 2 months. That was the window Ye Tian had to put in his application to become a town guard. In a few months, once the formation was completely stable, the rift would be contained, and only 1 or 2 king-rank guards would be needed. If he waited, there would be no chance to get assigned. Every now and then, a high or mid-level ferocious beast, sometimes even low-level ones, slipped out of the rift, but the king-rank fighters weren't keen to chase each small outbreak. They were training and cultivating. Only when the beasts' numbers swelled would they sweep through and clear them all at once. The incursions were a cycle, impossible to stop entirely. As long as the space rift existed, ferocious beasts would slip through, and people would always have to send out guards to clear them until one day humanity could strike back at the source. From the rift's edge, 1,000 meters away, Ye Tian had built a small house. To outside eyes, he was just another cultivator. But that was a front. He had spent his time copying a talent that let him enshroud and study these beasts, to read their innate abilities and strengths. He had a plan. Use the high soul transfer talent to seize control of a high-level monster, then take it through the rift to see what lay on the other side. He was burning with curiosity about that other world. First, fuse my advanced sword techniques, he muttered. Ye Tian began the fusion. Before long, the process was complete. Sword talent. Top finally. My sword talent is ranked at the top. If I go back now, I can definitely find a silver-level sword technique. With my current aptitude, I'll soon be able to realize sword intent to a very high degree and refine a silver-grade sword art to perfection. That will massively increase my combat strength. Ye Tian felt a thrill of anticipation. He immediately resumed refining the purple blood alchemy while keeping a close watch on the surrounding high-grade feral beasts. He needed to find one with a strong bloodline talent that was already at the apex of the high-tier beasts. If he could occupy such a body, his bloodline talent would let him ascend to the top-tier beast level quickly. Combined with his own exceptional talent, that body would rival a powerful top-tier beasts, and only then could he venture farther afield. If he settled for an inferior body, he'd be stuck at high-tier strength and confined to a single area, unable to go anywhere else. 3 days passed. A high-level fierce beast suddenly burst into Ye Tian's replication talent induction. Species: Tianlin beast bloodline talent, extraordinary defense talent, high-strength talent, primary. A Tianlin beast with excellent talent, perfect, Ye Tian said with a smile. Before activating his soul transfer talent, he announced to the other kings that he would withdraw for a while and would depart the stronghold in a month. The others had no objections. There wasn't much to do here, and cleaning up the fierce beasts was an easy task. It was fine for Ye Tian to step back. Before putting his plan into action, he called Xiao Blood over. Xiao Blood, I'm going to use my soul transfer talent and slip into another fierce beast to scout the spatial rift. You must stay with my body and guard it. Don't let anyone near it. Do you understand? Ye Tian repeated the order, his voice grave and insistent. Master, Little Blood will definitely protect your body. Xiao Blood replied with a firm nod. Ye Tian reached out, ruffled Xiao Blood's head, and whispered, Good, I'm counting on you. He trusted him. Though the other could be petty over small things, he never hesitated when it mattered most. So Ye Tian felt completely at ease. Soul transfer. Why? Ye Tian activated the talent. In an instant, his soul condensed into a streak of light that tore through the void and shot straight into the heavenly Lin beast's soul sea. Who? The celestial beast bellowed as it sensed the intrusion. Extinguish! A blade of soul light leapt up to meet the invader, but Ye Tian met it with equal force. With a single, decisive stroke, the beast's original soul was obliterated. Like a magpie seizing a dove's nest, Ye Tian took possession of the body. He poured his consciousness into the vessel and gradually seized control. The heavenly Lin beast's eyes opened again, but there was a new clarity and intelligence in them. Tianlin beast Ye Tian had been born. This feels strange, he murmured inwardly as he tested the body, making odd, unfamiliar movements. 10 minutes of awkward trial and correction were all it took. By then Ye Tian could fight with the beast's form as naturally as with his own. Hurry! Ye Tian didn't dare waste another second. He had no idea when the kings would next sweep through, and if they came while he was still here, he'd be dead for sure. He was only a high-level fierce beast cultivator, nowhere near the power of a king. He pushed the Tianlin beast's body to its limit and sprinted toward the space rift. Boom, boom. Within a few breaths, they dove through the tier in the air. The world seemed to shift and twist around him, and in the next instant, he found himself somewhere unfamiliar. A thunderous weight pinched at him and made his head swim. Gravity. It's enormous. Roughly 20 times Earth's, he muttered after a moment, forcing his limbs to adjust to the crushing force. He took in his surroundings. They had emerged in a dense forest, dim and heavy under that oppressive gravity. Periodically, other fierce beasts, curious about the rippling portal overhead, would leap up and disappear through it. Ye Tian put distance between himself and the rift as fast as he could. He knew better than to linger. Even if the king beasts had moved on, there would almost certainly be guardians watching the portal. It was safer to get well away before anyone noticed him. The space rift made him uneasy. Whoever owned those golden eyes was probably watching it constantly, and Ye Tian had no desire to linger anywhere near it. He ran until his lungs burned, until finally he came to a stop. "Focus on the strongest ones first," he barked. He was about to give the signal when, almost by reflex, he checked his own talents. A familiar interface flashed across his vision. The replica talent could be used in this body too. That was good news. The readout showed identity, human, Ye Tian, bloodline talent, extraordinary, speed talent, advanced, blade talent, advanced, strength talent, top, defense talent, top, and more. Almost every talent he expected in this fierce beast's body was visible, but something was wrong. Ye Tian's brow tightened as he scanned the details. Every talent had been downgraded. He recalled the warning in the soul transfer imprint. When the soul transfer is active, you can't perfectly manifest the original body's talents. They are suppressed. It was normal. Once he returned to his own body, his true talents would return to their full strength. For now, he would have to make do with the reduced stats and command his forces carefully. Never mind, having peak strength talent is enough. As for swordplay, I can use my claw like a blade to perform the Qingfeng slash. It won't be perfect, but it should still boost my combat power several times over. Ye Tian reassured himself inwardly. Chapter 122. A high-level ferocious beast wandered ahead. Ye Tian rushed forward and tore it apart with a single claw. He then activated his blood-devouring talent, drank the creature's blood, and absorbed the power contained within it. His strength rose quickly. "Too bad the purple blood body-refining technique can't affect beasts," he muttered. "If it could, I'd reach the apex beast level much faster." He kept hunting. At first, Ye Tian avoided the strongest monsters, picking off high-level beasts and some weaker apex-tier ones. After 3 days of relentless killing, he finally broke through into the apex beast level and felt his power surge. Testing his new strength, Ye Tian took control of the beast's body and used its flight ability. Oddly, the higher he climbed, the heavier everything seemed, the gravity increasing with altitude, a strange quirk of this world of beasts. At about 3,000 meters up, he peered down and scanned the horizon, but the beast world was vast. From that height, he still couldn't take it all in. He couldn't help but admit that the ferocious beast world was overwhelmingly powerful. Top-tier beasts roamed the surface freely. King-class beasts weren't rare, and from time to time their thunderous roars rolled across the land. The realm's heaven and earth yuan qi, the world's vital energy, was also exceptionally strong, easily 3 times what he'd felt on Earth. In just a few days, Ye Tian had come across countless millennia-old medicinal herbs, scattered everywhere as if no one cared to take them. The place must be ancient, he thought. With such abundant vitality, it made sense that so many long-grown treasures would spring up. But the beasts themselves made little use of them, so the herbs went mostly ignored. If humanity could ever conquer this world, its resources would be virtually limitless. Unfortunately, the ferocious beast world was far too dangerous, and Ye Tian had only scratched the surface of what it held. Ye Tian had come to the beast world for only two reasons: to see what this place was really like, and to find a stronger talent to copy. He had been granted permission to remain in the beast world for 1 month. His replication ability could copy a talent in well under a month. If he found something exceptional, he could take it with him. He deliberately went to the beast's stronghold. If there was any place to run into rare, powerful talents, it would be here among the dens and hunting grounds of the fiercest creatures. All he needed was patience and careful searching. A few days into his hunt, Ye Tian picked up the scent of another Tianlin beast. This one's aura was far more potent than the ordinary Tianlin. It was a king-class Tianlin beast, the sort of presence that marked a ruler among predators. Ferocious beasts weren't like quarrelsome humans. Different species mostly kept to their instincts and territories. Outright infighting was uncommon. In many ways, the beast tribes were more orderly and unified than human settlements. That made encountering a king-level creature both rarer and more instructive. Ye Tian didn't run. Instead of hiding or turning away, he approached. Contacting a king-level Tianlin beast was dangerous, but it could also open doors. Learning from it, measuring himself against it, perhaps even finding the highest kinds of talents roaming this world. He moved with care, keeping his senses sharp and his posture non-threatening. The jungle around them was alive with the distant calls of lesser predators, but as he neared the clearing, he could feel the king's presence like a low hum through the ground. After a tense, measured approach, Ye Tian finally stood eye to eye with the king-class Tianlin beast. The creature chirped, sudden, garbled noises that weren't words so much as a ripple of mental fluctuation. Ye Tian felt the meaning come through anyway. "Which child are you? Sacred Beast Mountain is about to open. Why are you wandering outside?" Curious, Ye Tian parted his lips and sent back a simple instinctive wave. "I'm lost." The beast understood instantly. Ye Tian felt its sympathy like a warm breeze. "You've grown into a top-tier beast and you're still lost? Poor thing, something must have gone wrong when you were born. Come with me, I'll take you to Sacred Beast Mountain." Relief flooded Ye Tian. He nodded and obediently followed the king-level Heavenly Lin beast as it turned and strode off toward the mountain. From their conversation, Ye Tian realized the king-level Tianlin beast was unusually intelligent, second only to humans, and, among the ferocious beasts, it carried a rare nobility. It was clearly a cut above most of its kind. After they'd gone on for a while, the Tianlin beast grew impatient with Ye Tian's slow pace. Without warning, it reached down, scooped him up, and shot forward at incredible speed. The creature's flight was breathtaking. Ye Tian's own body couldn't match it. Although the beast's speed talent was only middling for something of king-level power, its raw strength made it one of the more formidable king-class beasts, and it still moved far faster than Ye Tian ever could alone. Even so, the journey took 5 or 6 hours. "Sacred Beast Mountain is so far," Ye Tian muttered. If he'd tried to fly there at his current speed, it would have taken him nearly half a month. Ye Tian stared up at a mountain so immense it vanished into the clouds. It must have been on the order of 100,000 meters high. The peak loomed so vast it seemed to press down on the sky itself. Even from 10 miles away, he felt the weight of it, his chest tightening. A king-rank fierce beast landed beside him and spoke curtly. "The Sacred Beast Mountain doesn't allow ferocious beasts above the king rank to enter. I won't go in. Go on by yourself." Before Ye Tian could object, the beast scooped him up and tossed him toward the mountain, then spread its wings and flew off. "How rude!" Ye Tian spat, crawling out of the shallow pit where he'd landed. He was furious, but he knew he wasn't equipped to fight that beast. He pushed on into the Sacred Beast Mountain. Immediately, he was surrounded by Tianlin beasts. Thousands of them. Most were high-rank or top-tier fierce beasts. Their numbers alone made it obvious that the Tianlin were a vast and dominant race in the beast world. Curious and cautious, Ye Tian activated his replication talent and scanned the surrounding square kilometers. Every single one of those Tianlin beasts registered as carrying an extraordinary grade bloodline talent. He felt a chill run through him. That was frightening. If this place were transplanted into the human world, it would mean an entire clan of exceptional cultivators. How terrifying that would be. No wonder humans have always been weak against the ferocious beasts. The beasts have a huge advantage in innate talent, but humans have terrifying potential too. Right now, they're only beginning to rise. As they mature, the talents of future generations will climb ever higher, and one day they'll outstrip the beast clans. Ye Tian felt great confidence in humanity and in himself. The heavenly Lin beasts surged up toward the peak of Sacred Beast Mountain. Unaware of anything else, Ye Tian sprinted after them. For some reason, neither the mountain nor the air allowed flight. Even with his flying talent, Ye Tian couldn't take off. Gravity pressed down so heavily that movement was painfully slow. It took him half an hour just to reach the middle of the mountainside. There he ran into even more heavenly Lin beasts. Suddenly, Ye Tian sensed the presence of an unusually gifted Tianlin beast. Species, Tianlin beast. Bloodline talent, Morning Star. Defensive aptitude, medium. On paper, it didn't have many specialties. Its only prominent talent was in defense, but its bloodline talent was extraordinary. It had already reached the Morning Star level and had the potential to ascend beyond the king level in time. Among the Tianlin Beast clan, that kind of bloodline marked it as a rare prodigy. Its physical form was nothing exceptional, but the inherited bloodline alone made it dangerous. Even so, Ye Tian was unfazed. He already occupied the body of that very beast and wielded more than a dozen powerful talents of his own. Those abilities more than compensated for the beast's natural advantage. He could easily crush this Morning Star-blooded prodigy. Chapter 123, Sacred Beast Mountain. Ye Tian moved slowly. The pressure here had reached 100 times Earth's gravity, almost the limit a great martial artist could endure. His fierce beast body was top tier. It could withstand the 100G environment, but it made every step sluggish. Even so, he was far better off than many high-level Tianlin beasts, which could hardly move at all under such crushing force. He kept climbing, curiosity tugging at him. What could be at the summit? His spatial perception couldn't even reach the peak. A strange, suppressive force seemed to block any probing of the area above, as if an invisible barrier stopped his senses in mid-stride. After another half-hour of painfully slow ascent, he finally reached the top. There, dominating the summit, stood a colossal stone stela, as if planted between heaven and earth for eternity. It radiated an ancient, oppressive power. The monument rose a full 100 meters and stretched 20 meters across, its presence alone bending the air around it. The stone stele was covered in dense lines, not a formation, but etched with a powerful, mysterious truth. Ye Tian didn't rush to study it. Instead, he activated his replication talent and began scanning the heavenly Lin beasts gathered around him for their innate gifts. What he saw surprised him. 4 with the Morning Star bloodline, he murmured. He paused. 4 Morning Star bloodlines among the beasts was impressive, but when he thought of the Tianlin beast clan's overall strength, it wasn't shocking. Still, he didn't copy the Morning Star bloodline. His current, borrowed body would only last a month. After that, his soul would return to his original body. Investing his replication on a transient vessel to gain a permanent bloodline trait would be wasted. So he kept scanning, concentrating on unusual or special talents. There were 100,000 heavenly Lin beasts spread across the mountaintop. Surely there had to be something noteworthy among them. Ye Tian drifted from group to group, eyes sweeping their auras and talents. Then suddenly, one talent caught his attention. Chapter Substitute Death Talent, Medium. This talent, interesting. Ye Tian felt a spark of excitement. It was only a mid-tier talent, but some of those are deceptively useful, sometimes more so than outright top-tier abilities. The High Soul Transfer talent, for example, was far more valuable to him than any Windblade talent. He had no need for blades, but Soul Transfer opened doors. Being a high-ranked talent didn't automatically make something practical. Usefulness mattered more. From the name, Substitute Death sounded like a life-saving ability. It probably let someone die in place of another, or otherwise avert death through substitution. Ye Tian couldn't copy it yet, but he could mark it. Using the spatial imprint from his spatial talent, he tagged the Tianlin beast with the Substitute Death talent. More and more Tianlin beasts gathered at the mountaintop, chattering among themselves. Since Ye Tian occupied one of their bodies, he could hear their conversations as if he were part of the pack. Soon, Ye Tian learned what the Sacred Beast Mountain was really about. Both the Sacred Beast Mountain and the Heavenly Lin Beast's own holy peak lay squarely within Heavenly Lin territory, so other ferocious beasts seldom ventured there, and when any trace of an intruder was found, the Lin beasts showed no mercy. The greatest prize on the mountain was a stone tablet called the Heavenly Tablet of Enlightenment, a treasure said to have been birthed by heaven and earth. Because the tablet was bound to the mountain, it could not be removed, so it remained there, and for that reason, the Lin beasts claimed the place as their sacred mountain. The Heavenly Tablet of Enlightenment had many uses, and Ye Tian picked up a few details about them from the heavenly beasts themselves. There are 3 major benefits. First, they can raise intelligence. If the Enlightenment Heavenly Tablet is activated, any Tianlin beast that spends time near the Enlightenment Heavenly Monument will gradually have its intellect enhanced by the tablet's influence. This slow, steady effect explains why the Tianlin beast clan is known for its high intelligence. Second, there's a small chance a beast's innate special talents can be upgraded. For example, a primary level speed talent might be elevated to an intermediate level speed talent. The success rate is very low, only a few Tianlin beasts manage it, and those that do are prodigies. Third, the tablet can help beasts with combat aptitude to comprehend ferocious beast combat techniques. Once a beast truly grasps one of these methods, its power can multiply many times over. However, beasts that possess or can access genuine combat techniques are extremely rare. Tactics? Ye Tian scanned the crowd and realized that a few of the Tianlin beasts possessed a combat tactics talent. At first he hadn't known what that talent entailed, but after listening to the others discuss it, he began to form a theory. Their warfare method should be similar to human sword techniques and sword intent, he thought. If that was true, then perhaps the Heavenly Tablet of Enlightenment could help him understand, or even create, sword skills. The idea terrified him with possibility. This wouldn't just be learning a single sword move. It could be the birth of an entire sword art. Maybe, no, it's very possible. Ye Tian's heart surged with excitement. The problem was that the Heavenly Tablet hadn't been opened yet. It was sealed by the high-ranking Tianlin beasts, and only unsealed at specific times, once every 10 years. And when it was opened, each period of enlightenment lasted only about a month. A low, buzzing hum rolled across the summit. The Heavenly Tablet of Enlightenment exuded an ancient aura as its carved lines began to glow. With a thunderous sound, light poured out and instantly bathed the peak. In an instant, every celestial beast found themselves cut off from the world. Sacred Beast Mountain, the sun and moon, the trees and flowers, even the other beasts, all vanished. It felt as if, between heaven and earth, each of them stood alone in a private realm. Enlightenment space, Ye Tian thought, heart quickening. Begin, don't waste time. He hurriedly drew a high-grade Yuanli sword Qi, released his sword intent, and plunged into study. A mysterious energy wrapped around him, and his comprehension seemed to multiply. Every sword sensation was amplified. The Qingfeng slash and the shadow-killing sword Xuanao flowed through his mind, and his understanding of sword techniques accelerated at an incredible pace. Suddenly, Ye Tian's eyes widened. There are so many flaws in the Qingfeng slash, he realized. At first he had thought the Qingfeng chopper was flawless, but now every flaw stood out. Revise, recreate. Ye Tian kept changing the Qingfeng style, polishing it into something else entirely, even folding in elements of the shadow-killing school's rapid blade techniques. 1 day passed, then 2. In the blink of an eye, 5 days went by. On the 5th day, Ye Tian suddenly laughed. Yet in the feral body of the Tianlin beast, he could not laugh like a man. The sound burst out as a wild, excited cry. He had finally forged a new knife skill. Silver-level sword skill. Ye Tian's heart raced. He had actually forged a silver-grade sword technique, and he had done it himself. It was almost unbelievable, a master producing a silver-level skill. Of course, this success wasn't just down to the enlightened Tao's heavenly tablet. It was also the result of Ye Tian's own supreme sword technique. Without that top-tier foundation, even his innate talent for enlightenment wouldn't have been enough to produce a silver-grade art. With only a basic sword method, he wouldn't have reached bronze. It was the combination of his heaven-defying aptitude and the guidance of the Enlightenment Heavenly Tablet that made the silver-level technique possible. Ye Tian smiled at the thought that, given enough time, he might even refine it into a gold-level skill. But 1 month certainly wasn't enough, and perhaps not even a year. He abandoned the attempt to force a gold-grade creation under the time pressure and settled on a name for what he'd made. Heavenly Pole Chop. According to Ye Tian's calculations, the silver-grade sword technique Heavenly Pole Slash was a perfect fit for him, and it would benefit him far more than it would most others. At the entry stage, it multiplies attack power 8-fold, at the minor accomplishment stage 9-fold, at great accomplishment 10-fold, and at consummation, it multiplies attack 12-fold. What set Heavenly Pole apart from most silver-grade offensive techniques was the speed bonus. When brought to perfection, it also doubles one's attack speed. Most silver-grade attack sword skills top out at around 11 times attack power, so a perfected Heavenly Pole Slash 12-fold attack plus a 2-time speed boost would be extraordinarily rare. If this technique were ever made public, sword prodigies would fight over it tooth and nail, even to the point of desperation. The sword technique itself doesn't need to be fully grasped right now, Ye Tian thought. The real value of the Enlightenment Heavenly Tablet is that it sharpens comprehension. It was precisely that boost in understanding that let me forge a silver-tier sword art. That so-called enhancement of intelligence was simply the tablet's radiance, and for those heavenly Lin beasts to be able to take advantage of it too, ridiculous. There were only a little more than 20 days left. He couldn't afford to waste them. He had to pursue insight into sword intent. Only by applying sword art with true understanding could he extract the tablet's full power. His sword intent realm was only at 20%. If the Enlightenment Heavenly Tablet enlightened him, he would improve quickly. Enlightenment, he urged inwardly. Countless sword intent mysteries flashed through Ye Tian's mind, and he began drawing their essences into himself. Gradually, the sword intent gauge sprang upward, 22, 23%, 24%, 25%. Every day his progress quickened. The pace was impossible for anyone outside to achieve. 1 day of seclusion for him felt like a month, or even 2 for ordinary cultivators. With his natural aptitude for sword techniques, his gains were terrifyingly rapid. 10 days had passed. Ye Tian opened his eyes, a thrill running through him. 60% sword intent, he murmured. At 60% sword intent, he could bring a silver-level sword technique to perfection. If he pushed that intent to 70%, he would qualify to cultivate a gold-level sword technique. The higher the sword intent tier, the harder it was to advance, and with only 10 days left, he calculated it was practically impossible to reach 70% in time. Even if he somehow did, he still wouldn't be able to obtain a gold-level sword technique within the short span remaining. So he wasn't impatient to force the sword intent any further. Instead, he settled on a new plan. Maybe it was wiser to work on improving his special talent. Other heavenly Lin beasts could enhance special talents. Ye Tian could try as well. Success was unlikely, but if it worked, the gain would be worth it. He chose the defensive talent to undergo enlightenment. Ye Tian linked the defensive talent seal to the talent mark of enlightenment. His talent mark was at the Pseudo-Upanishads level. The beast he used embodied only the top rank, but that did not downgrade his talent mark. His defensive talent remained at the Pseudo-Upanishads level. The breath from the heavenly tablet of enlightenment washed over him. Ye Tian stood motionless, like an ancient bell, calm, centered, and the air around him grew increasingly ineffable. 3 days passed, and then insight dawned. Why call it Pseudo-Upanishads? He asked himself. He realized it was because he had not yet reached the true Upanishads. The so-called Upanishads were not an independent grade so much as a synthesis. Top-tier talents, when fused with the true Upanishads, became a far more powerful talent. What he possessed now was only the appearance of that level, not the genuine article. Only those with supreme talent can take part in the Upanishads. That kind of top-tier talent is the entry threshold for them. Ye Tian had achieved enlightenment, but not the kind that led into the Upanishads. The Upanishads were an expression of the law itself. Call them the Upanishads of the law, and he did not yet understand them fully. All he knew was that the Upanishads lay between heaven and earth, woven into everything in the universe. To awaken to the Upanishads was to possess a perfect talent that truly belonged to oneself. But that kind of awakening was brutally difficult. Even after the acceleration his insight had received under the heavenly tablet of enlightenment, crossing that threshold remained almost impossible for him. With only 10 days left, could he break through? Ye Tian didn't know. He refused to give up. Enlightenment! 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 He repeated to himself, pouring every ounce of body and spirit into the struggle. Time slipped by, and the final deadline approached. Only 1 day remained before the heavenly tablet of enlightenment's period ended, the last day. Ye Tian felt the aura bloom suddenly, and a flood of sensations washed through him. He realized at once what it was, the defensive Upanishads. He activated his defensive talent. The power began to fuse with his body, sending out a peculiar wave, the presence of the Upanishads. But it wasn't a complete transformation. The status display showed, defense talent pseudo-Upanishads, 30%. The 30% meant his defensive talent and his body had fused to 30%, a huge leap from before, when the fusion hadn't even reached 10%. It was a major advance along the Upanishads' path. Once the fusion is complete, his defensive talent will fully become an Upanishad's defensive talent, the true anti-heaven talent. Ye Tian tested his abilities. The pseudo-Upanishad's defense was no longer a 30-fold boost, but a 35-fold one. It was only a modest improvement, but it was a promising start. He had already glimpsed the outline of a defensive Upanishad's technique. If he continued to refine his understanding, he could genuinely reach the level of an Upanishad's defensive talent, a prospect far better than for those who had no hope at all. Better still, he reminded himself, I can copy. If I ever encounter a pseudo-Upanishad's defensive talent, I can replicate it, and the fusion will advance rapidly. Ye Tian looked forward to that possibility, but he also understood how unlikely it was. The chance of meeting a pseudo-Upanishad's defensive talent or any other pseudo-esoteric aptitude was vanishingly small. He himself had been able to enter the pseudo-esoteric tier only because he had forged a flawless foundation. Without such a base, others could not step into that level, except by some extraordinary chance. Don't think too far ahead, he told himself. Keep working. He planned to use the last day of this period to study the defensive Upanishads and push his realm of defense higher. Then, without warning, something changed, an abrupt mutation in his talent that no calculation had predicted. Chapter 125, Boom! A terrifying strike shattered the enlightened space. The celestial beasts panicked, unsure what had happened. Ye Tian looked up and saw a towering presence appear in the sky. 10 colossal heavenly beasts, each hundreds of meters long, were locked in combat with a single blood-red, three-eyed monkey that stood 10 meters tall. Their battle shook the void. Dark clouds spanning thousands of miles were torn apart and a shaft of light punched through the sky. The sheer power on display stunned Ye Tian. This was not merely king-level strength, this was well above king-level. He had thought it would be an even fight, but he was wrong. In an instant the divine monkey struck. With a single blow, it sent one Tianlin beast flying apart in a spray of blood and slammed into another, hurling it away. The second beast, as it tumbled out of the fray, had its life force drained from it. The other heavenly Lin beasts had unleashed the full power of their bloodlines to stop the divine monkey, but the beast's third eye suddenly opened and projected a blade of space itself. In an instant, the blade tore through 3 of the heavenly Lin beasts, killing them outright. Spatial talent, and it can form a space blade, at least a high-level space talent. Ye Tian's heart leapt. He'd never seen spatial talent above the mid-level before. Copy it, he thought frantically. Copy it, whatever it takes. His face went grim. He couldn't simply fly straight up and confront the divine monkey. The creature could strike from tens of thousands of meters away. He refused to get within a kilometer of that range. There had to be another way. Above them, more heavenly Lin beasts were cut down one after another. The divine monkey paid no heed to the sacred Beast Mountain's prohibition and streaked forward, its gaze locked on the heavenly tablet of enlightenment. That tablet was its objective. The divine monkey let out a sharp cry and drove the space blade into the ground beneath the tablet. The earth began to fissure, and the heavenly tablet of enlightenment trembled on its pedestal. The Tianlin beasts closest to the blast were killed outright by the shock wave. Those farther away were unharmed. Ye Tian had been affected too, but his healing talent, though only a relatively high-level one in this body, kept him alive. He was badly wounded, however. "Only 1,500 meters left," Ye Tian called out, urgency in his voice. The situation was getting more desperate, but the more urgent it became, the more he had to force himself not to rush. He realized he might not survive this. Before he let himself panic, he quickly copied the Tianlin beast's feigned death ability, then calmed his heart. Once settled, there was only one thing left to try: copying the high-space talent. Whether he could pull it off now would be a matter of pure luck. The divine monkey's intent had been obvious. It wanted to sever the heavenly path tablet and steal it. It was acting with extreme haste because it feared the Tianlin beast clan. The true heavyweights of the clan hadn't yet arrived. The 10 Tianlin beasts they'd just faced were only guardians. If the clan's real power showed up, the divine monkey would stand no chance. The space blade was terrifying. It had already begun to sever the tenuous link between the heavenly tablet of the enlightened Tao and sacred Beast Mountain. If given time, it could truly tear the tablet away. At that moment, a vast host of celestial beasts thundered down from the far sky, numbers in the thousands, their oppressive presence dimming the sun. The divine monkey spotted them at the edge of sight, a surge of envy and panic flashing across its face. It sprinted for the heavenly tablet, cutting the tablet's tether to sacred Beast Mountain and yanking the artifact free with brutal force. Before Ye Tian could react, the divine monkey was already within 1,000 meters. Ye Tian's replication ability flared, enveloping the creature and instantly scanning its attributes. Species: three-eyed monkey bloodline. Talent: Morningstar Space Talent, Advanced Speed. D-Talent: Medium Blood Pupil Talent, Advanced. Judged by its talents, the divine monkey was alarmingly dangerous, more than capable of killing foes on its own level. "Copy," Ye Tian barked. Without another word, he duplicated the high space talent. He didn't even bother with the others. The spatial talent was the true heaven-defying gift, on the same level as the time talent. The two were supreme. Even just the high space talent outclassed ordinary, top-tier, or pseudo-mystical offensive talents. A spatial attack might not rely on brute force, but who could truly block space itself? Even a Master Realm expert from the Yi Heavenly Heaven sect would struggle to stop a spatial blade. If Ye Tian could wield the high space talent, it would be a genuine trump card. In an instant, he had finished copying it. A roar cut through the distance. "Curse the three-eyed monkey!" The sound was not human speech, but the trembling language of a celestial beast. The next moment, a gigantic claw ripped through the void and slammed down on the three-eyed monkey. The space itself froze, and even Ye Tian found he could not move. It was a terrifying presence, on the same level as the golden-eyed master of the original spatial rift. Under that crushing force, the three-eyed monkey's teleportation was suppressed. It couldn't break free. Roar! The three-eyed monkey refused to yield. A massive spatial blade slammed into the claws of the enormous Tianlin beast. A catastrophic shockwave rolled outward. Ye Tian and the other Tianlin beasts who hadn't fled were caught in it. Their bodies were shredded in an instant. They died on the spot. Back on Earth, inside a top-tier array, a soul pierced the void and dove into a house. Ye Tian opened his eyes, his head throbbing and his mind aching. He was back. He'd expected to remain withdrawn for 3 months, but instead he'd been blasted back early. "My soul's been damaged. It'll take at least 3 months to recover," he thought, assessing himself. "During that time, I can't take part in the Enlightenment Array or the Enlightenment Sword Technique, but given what I gained, it was absolutely worth it." A bright, exhilarated smile spread across Ye Tian's face. He had just acquired a ludicrous stack of talents at once. Death Talent, Advanced Space Talent, Defense Upanishads, a 60% sword intention, and a silver-ranked sword technique, Heavenly Pole Chop. Any one of those would drive an ordinary disciple mad with envy. He'd gotten them all in a single instant. The memory of the moment he died flashed back. The enormous paw of the heavenly Lin beast had been less than a kilometer away. In that split second, he'd reflexively scanned the creature's talent readout. The imprint was still clear in his mind. Species: Tianlin Beast Bloodline. Talent: Huyu Strength Talent, Medium Speed Talent, Medium Hui Level Bloodline Talent. Ye Tian molded over. Where did Hui sit in the hierarchy? Would a Huyo bloodline commonly produce cultivation talent above the Morning Star level? If so, then Little Blood's Shi-Ri grade bloodline must rank even higher than Huyo. Morning Star, Glowing Moon, Dawning Sun. Of those three cultivation tiers, Ye Tian was only at Morning Star. Yet among the people of Demon Sea Grand Base, even a Morning Star talent was legendary. Soon, once I step into the King tier, I'll go to the Super Base. There I'll copy 2 Morning Star talents. With them I can reach the Huyu level cultivation talent. Improving my cultivation will be easy. Ye Tian said it with quiet confidence. But first he had to fuse the 2 talents already in his possession. Only once they were merged could he proceed. He set to work at once. Because his soul had been damaged recently, the fusion hurt far more than it ever had before. The pain was raw and constant. It felt like his mind was being pulled in opposite directions. He clenched his teeth and forced himself to persist. Half an hour later, the agony finally subsided. Ye Tian opened his eyes. He had succeeded. The substitute death talent had been fused with the high GH altitude talent. He closed his eyes again and sent out his senses to probe the new composite talent. It took only moments for him to understand its function and potential. A slow smile spread across his face. "This talent is excellent," he murmured, a surge of satisfaction warming him. Chapter 126. Ye Tian's guess was right. The substitute death talent did allow him to be spared, but it wasn't an unconditional immortality. The ability required prepared materials, corpses, either of fierce beasts or of people. Using his power, Ye Tian could transform one of those corpses into a near-perfect double of himself and hide it away as a standby. If he were killed in the outside world, he could trigger the substitute death talent instantly and exchange places with the hidden double. The double would die in his stead, while his own body would be preserved. Because the substitute was crafted to resemble him so exactly, and even mimicked subtle signs of life, an enemy who didn't examine the corpse closely would be convinced it was really him. Of course, a heavenly ability like this had its limits. It could be used only once every 3 years, and there was a strict range limit. The distance between Ye Tian and the hidden substitute could not exceed 1 million miles at the moment of activation. If they were farther apart than that, the substitution would fail. Maybe the death substitute ability would be raised from medium to high later. Its range could be extended and its cooldown shortened, but for now, Ye Tian could only use the medium-level version. "I should find time to create a death substitute doppelganger," he murmured. "It's basically an extra life." He turned his attention to his spatial skill. Space Talent Advanced. The medium-level space talent had granted him space perception, space imprinting, a carry-on pocket dimension, and teleportation. Now, promoted to the advanced tier, his pocket space had expanded tenfold, large enough to be compared to a small room, and all the other functions had grown far stronger. It truly lived up to being an advanced space skill. Ye Tian was pleased, but what excited him most was the Space Blade. Space Blade. At the thought, a black blade materialized before him, formed entirely from spatial energy. It looked like a tear in the fabric of reality shaped into a weapon, a blade of pure, humming distortion. Dissipate. Ye Tian wiped the remaining traces of the Space Blade technique from his mind. He refused to test it here. If the other king-level cultivators noticed, how could he explain? He couldn't risk revealing his advanced spatial talent. It had to stay hidden for now. "Back to cultivation," he muttered. If his soul were damaged, things like enlightenment formations, sword intent, and sword techniques would suffer. Fortunately, purple blood alchemy wasn't dependent on the soul, so he threw himself into it. Every day, he drained the blood of king-level fierce beasts to refine the alchemy, driving his progress relentlessly. The second pulse he aimed to condense was the Yang Dimensional Pulse. He was close to completing it. 10 days later, he succeeded. His physical strength surged. He felt as if he possessed the power of 21 elephants. The third meridian in his Ye Tianchuan system was the Yin Seesaw Pulse, one of the 8 pulses recorded in the Qi Jing Classic. After that breakthrough, the next weeks were uneventful. Steady cultivation interspersed with occasional cleanups of nearby fierce beasts. 2 months passed with Ye Tian stationed by the space crack, patient and unobserved. 26th Elephant Force, almost there. Ye Tian finished packing and strode out of the room with Xiao Blood at his heels. Today was the day they were rotating out of the top formation. He wasn't the only one leaving. The other king-rank cultivators and formation mages were going too. After the transfer, only a single formation mage and 1 king-level guardian would remain. The top formation had been fully stabilized. The spatial rift had calmed. There was no longer any need for a large garrison. A royal wind boat arrived with a whoosh. "Ha! Someone finally came to relieve us. We're ready to go," one of the kings called. A steady stream of people climbed down the gangplank. Ye Tian frowned. There were far more than 2 coming off the boat. Only a handful were men. The rest were women. Then it clicked. Those 2 men must have been the stationed king and formation mage who'd been on duty for months. Long stretches of garrison duty get tedious. It wasn't uncommon for people in that situation to bring attendants, companions, or maids to take care of other needs. Ye Tian didn't pass judgment. Everyone had their own way of coping. The handover was complete. Ye Tian and the other king tier and formation mages returned to the Demon Sea Grand Base. Riding Little Blood, Ye Tian made the trip home quickly. It was afternoon when he arrived. In the courtyard he found Ye Yu still cultivating, but no longer a novice. Ye Yu had broken through to the realm of a great martial artist and had already graduated from the martial training school. "Brother, you're back!" Ye Yu cried when he saw him. He hadn't seen Ye Tian in months. After a moment of disbelief, he dashed forward and flung himself into Ye Tian's arms. "I'll cook today. Let's feast!" Ye Tian ruffled his hair and smiled. Ye Yu's face lit up with eager expectation. He looked impossibly small and earnest. So Ye Tian took charge of the kitchen and prepared a proper meal. Roasted fierce beast meats, steamed vegetables, fresh fruits, enough for everyone. The brothers and sisters ate heartily, laughter and the clatter of dishes filling the hall. It was a warm, ordinary family dinner, the kind of peace that made home feel worth protecting. As he watched Ye Yu laughing at the table, a quiet resolve settled over Ye Tian. If they were to keep this family safe, he would have to become stronger. In these turbulent times, stagnation meant being left behind, or worse. He swallowed another mouthful of food and promised himself he wouldn't let that happen. Ye Tian threw himself back into cultivation with renewed frenzy. He wanted to break through to the king level as quickly as possible. Only by reaching that stage would he qualify to enter the super base and pit himself against the countless geniuses of this dazzling age. Days flashed by. In the basement of his villa, Ye Tian worked on the corpse of a peak-level fierce beast. He intended to turn it into a substitute body, a spare vessel that could hold a life. 1 corpse alone wasn't enough. The ritual required auxiliary materials and his own blood. He had spent the past few days arranging for those supplies. Now everything was ready. He ground the ingredients into a fine powder, dripped the powder into a small pool of his blood, and mixed them into a paste. He spread the paste across the beast's still warm hide, painting every joint and seam as precisely as he could. When at last he stepped back, the corpse gleamed with the dark, viscous mixture. Here goes. Ye Tian summoned the medium death talent and channeled its power into the beast. Energy surged through his arms and into the corpse. Bones creaked, tendons twitched, and the basement filled with a low, rhythmic pounding as the infusion took hold. Boom, 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 boom. The beast's body began to contort and shrink, folding in on itself until it formed a compact ball of flesh. In the space of a moment, its monstrous features blurred and shifted toward a human shape. When the transformation finished, the corpse stood as a humanoid identical to Ye Tian, except it was completely lifeless, without breath or sign of animation. Ye Tian let out a sigh of relief. He could feel the bond between himself and the substitute corpse. He knew he could activate the death substitute talent once each year and replace the current substitute when needed. Satisfied, he sealed the underground chamber and set up defensive and concealment formations around it. 3 quiet months passed. Ye Tian's soul wound healed completely with no lingering aftereffects. During that time, he had mostly been cultivating in the intermediate Yuan Qi room at home, pushing himself non-stop. Over the 3 months, his power had risen by a total of 27 elephant power units, and his physical strength reached 53 elephant power units. With his soul fully recovered, he was now ready to advance to the Enlightenment sword technique and begin training the silver grade sword art, Heavenly Pole Chop. Chapter 127. The silver grade sword technique, Heavenly Pole Chopper, was Ye Tian's own creation. Others would have to study it slowly, but he didn't need to. He was the originator. His sword intent was already at 60%, which meant he could press forward and quickly bring the silver grade skill to perfection. So over the next 10 days, he threw himself into it. Day 1. He entered the silver grade sword technique, Heavenly Pole Chopper. Day 3. He reached initial proficiency with the Heavenly Pole Chopper. Day 6. The technique was nearly complete. Day 10. The silver grade Heavenly Pole Chopper was perfected. To cultivate a silver grade sword skill to mastery in 10 days was unheard of. Even a swordsman of the highest caliber with 60% sword intent would normally need at least a year to refine such a technique. This was the advantage of using a sword skill you'd invented yourself. The silver grade sword technique, Heavenly Pole, was flawless, and it multiplied Ye Tian's strength many times over. His base physical power had reached 53 elephant strength. After the enhancement of his Yuan force, it rose to 106 elephant strength. His Pseudo-Upanishad's grade strength talent boosted his attack 30-fold, and the Heavenly Pole slash from the silver grade sword technique added another 12-fold increase. Combined, Ye Tian's strongest strike came out to 38,160 elephant strength. One blow at 38,160 elephant strength. I am the master, he thought, swelling with pride. The most important thing was that he could actually release that much power. Ordinary people who hadn't forged a perfect foundation and broken the restrictions of heaven and earth couldn't do that. No matter how great their talent, they rarely managed to exert more than 100-fold increase in attack power. The minimum physical strength at the king level is 150 elephant power. The ultimate body strength for a king is 10,000 elephant power, and with stacked enhancements it can reach 20,000 elephant power. Right now, my attack already exceeds the ultimate king-level attack of someone without special talent. Ye Tian ran the numbers in his head. By that measure, he was already a very powerful king, among the strongest of his rank. His supreme speed talent put him close to the faster kings in terms of velocity, though he still fell far short of an invincible king's speed. There's still the Space Blade as my trump card, he reminded himself. Once I break through to Grandmaster Extreme, I might reach Invincible King's strength. Invincible King, that had been his dream long before. Now it suddenly felt within reach. At the pace his cultivation was moving, it would only take a few months. When that time came, he would have to prepare to leave the Demon Sea Grand Base and head for the Super Base, the only place to obtain the higher talents he needed. For the sake of a better future, he had no choice but to go. In the past few months at the Demon Sea Grand Base, Ye Tian had ignored most of the top-tier talents. He'd only copied a handful of general-purpose skills, things like the Supreme Windblade techniques, some high-grade thunder and lightning talents, none of which helped much in serious combat. He had, however, taken one genuinely useful ability, a mid-level magical talent. Magic wasn't especially powerful in a straight fight, but it could be invaluable for interrogation and other special situations, so Ye Tian kept a copy of it. What he really wanted, though, were the rarer, higher-ranked talents, cultivation talents at Morningstar level or above, pseudo-mystic level talents, high-grade spatial skills, and the like, abilities such as substitute death or soul transfer. None of those existed in the Demon Sea Grand Base, which is why he was eager to leave as soon as he could. That day, Ye Tian went to the Yuo family. He hadn't come to see Yue Ling. He had come to meet the Yuo family's sole king-ranked ancestor, Yue Ling. Deep in the estates, behind winding lanes and old walls, he found the courtyard where the elder lived, a classical, secluded compound that suited someone of such stature. This was Yue Ling's place. He preferred a bright, airy atmosphere, so he'd kept the apartment simple and fresh. "Brother Yue, sorry to bother you today," someone called as they stepped inside. Yue Ling's face lit up. "Oh, Xiaoyou, you're here. It's an honor." Ye Tian, who'd come along, spoke up eagerly. So, how did it go last time you went there? Yuling understood what he meant. The last time they'd parted, Ye Tian had gone off to investigate the superbase and had wanted to know how to get in. I made inquiries, Yuling said, his expression turning serious. The superbase isn't easy to enter. They have very strict requirements for outsiders. Short visits are possible, but if you want to move in and become a resident, it's not something money can buy. You need real strength. Ordinary kings aren't even eligible to be residents. So demanding? Ye Tian frowned. The entry bar is set that high to preserve the superbase's prestige and caliber, Yuling said. If a flood of low-talent people were allowed in, the headcount would swell, but the overall quality would drop. Ye Tian nodded. He agreed with that. It made practical sense. But the next thing Yuling said stunned him. Strength is only one part of it, Yuling continued, voice small and reluctant. The real problem is that the power structure inside the superbase is complicated. It feels like. He seemed almost afraid to finish the sentence, as if he were jealous or unwilling to believe what he'd realized. What does it feel like? Ye Tian urged. It feels like we're not the only humans in our era, Yuling blurted, drawing a long, shaky breath. For a moment, there was only silence. Ye Tian's face went pale. I don't know for sure, Yuling said. I heard it from a powerful king, and he'd heard it from other kings. They claim someone once saw a 3-meter-tall man inside a king-level stronghold, and even a 3-eyed human. But how could a human have 3 eyes and be 3 meters tall? His tone was incredulous. He wanted to dismiss it as impossible, but even he admitted he couldn't be certain. Strange things didn't usually get talked about for no reason. Ye Tian wondered if the superbases were really that different from ordinary people. The only way to find out was to go see for himself. Is there a map to the superbase? He asked. That was what mattered most. With a map, he could find an entrance. Without one, searching the vast territory would be little short of suicide. Yes, but only a rough one. Yuling produced a hand-drawn chart and pointed to a huge marked site, the Zhonghai superbase, the same superbase Yunmeng had once left to try to infiltrate. Thank you, Ye Tian said, tucking the map away. Startled, Yuling watched as Ye Tian tossed a secret manual at him. This manual should be my reward, Ye Tian said. I have other business. I won't be staying. With that, he turned and left. Yuling meant to hand it back, but when he picked up the cover, he froze. The title read, Silver Grade Sword Technique, Heavenly Pole Slash. He opened it and scanned the pages. The technique boosted both attack power and attack speed. When cultivated to its peak, it multiplied attack power 11-fold and nearly doubled attack speed. Only one person, Ye Tian, had ever managed to push the attack multiplier to 12. For everyone else, the ceiling was 11-fold. Yuling's hands trembled. A silver-grade manual like this was priceless. The Yu clan seldom produced true sword tech prodigies, but swordsmanship and formal sword techniques walked the same path. Those born with talent for swordplay could usually adapt to a sword technique with only minor adjustments and achieve roughly 80 to 90% of a specialist's power. Having a manual like this could change everything. The silver-level sword technique meant the world to the Yue family. They only possessed a damaged, broken copy. This reward is far too generous, Yuling thought, secretly grateful. Chapter 128. Yuling wasn't proud or ungrateful. If the reward had been useless or too important to the Yue family, he would have returned it without hesitation. But the silver-level sword technique was genuinely valuable, something the Yue family could put to good use, and he wasn't willing to hand it over. He told himself he would repay Ye Tian someday. He also knew that someday might never come. Opportunities like that were rare. Ye Tian was likely to leave for the superbase soon, and whether they would cross paths again once he did was anyone's guess. Ye Tian spread the map across the table and studied it closely. There weren't many marked locations. The 3 major bases, the Zhonghai base, a handful of medium-sized bases, and a few landmark sites. Simple, but functional. The map even shows the Zhonghai superbase, he murmured, tracing the route with a finger. 1 million kilometers. That's a long way. In another life, that distance would have sounded absurd, but in this world it was ordinary. The Earth itself had grown, or humanity's reach had, and 1 million kilometers, while still daunting, was no longer impossible. "It looks like the world has swollen to hundreds of times its old size," Ye Tian murmured. "If it had only expanded a few hundredfold, the Demon Sea bases couldn't possibly be 1,000,000 kilometers from the Zhonghai superbase." He scanned the map. It didn't even show a coastline. Whoever drew it had clearly never seen the sea. There were always whisperings about some great terror along the shore. What it was exactly, nobody knew, but even kings dared not set foot there. All anyone could say for certain was that the 3 Demon Sea bases lay near the coast, though no one had actually seen the ocean. The map offered only one terse note about the route from the Demon Sea base. Heading southwest, a road stretched for 500,000 kilometers and crossed a gargantuan river. Once said to be a branch of the Yangtze, it had become a waterway thousands of miles wide. That stretch was marked as the most dangerous. Without overwhelming strength, there was no way to cross it. Even ordinary kings would be swept away. No wonder so many of the Demon Sea Grand Base's kings avoid going to the Zhonghai superbase, Ye Tian mused. They must be jealous of this place. He was determined, though, to go himself. At first he'd planned to bring Ye Yu, Xiao Blood, Xiao Jin, and Xiao Zi, but he changed his mind. It wasn't that he didn't want them with him, he just needed to wait. According to Yue Ling, the Zhonghai superbase would not accept anyone who wasn't at king level. Ye Yu was only a great warrior. Even if he took her there, she wouldn't be admitted. Where would she stay then? So Ye Tian decided to go ahead alone. He set himself a clear goal. Once he attained king level, he would immediately make for the Zhonghai superbase and secure a place. Then he would return for Ye Yu. From that day on, Ye Tian threw himself into his cultivation. He trained constantly, rarely leaving home. The only times he went out were the occasional errands or to accompany his sister on shopping trips. While Ye Tian progressed steadily, Ye Yu was advancing just as quickly. Thanks to the massive supply of top-grade fierce beast blood Ye Tian had given her, and because her own aptitude was excellent, she, already a top-tier cultivation talent, was moving step by step toward becoming a supreme martial artist. Ye Tian thought about buying her a treasure that could elevate her talent into the extraordinary ranks, but soon ran into a harsh reality. Such items were nearly impossible to obtain. Even the Yun family couldn't buy them freely. Truly transformative treasures that could push someone beyond the top tier were extremely rare. Once someone reached the Morning Star level of talent, finding an artifact that could boost them further was likely a lost cause. That left one hope, the superbase in the Middle Sea. Ye Tian resolved to look there. He would pay whatever it took at the Middle Sea superbase to secure a promotion treasure. After all, Ye Yu was his only sister. He couldn't bear not to try. Another month passed in the blink of an eye. During that time, Ye Tian raised his elephant power by 9, bringing his total to 62 elephant power. He also copied 2 more talents, the high tracking talent, which lets him detect and follow residual breath in the air, and the high ice talent. He took the ice talent specifically for river operations. Its power to freeze water makes river battles far easier and reduces the risk of losses when crossing or fighting on rivers. Ye Tian also resumed training with formations. He possessed a top-tier formation talent, so if he didn't learn higher-level arrays, it would be a wasted advantage. At present, his secluded cultivation chamber was only equipped with the intermediate Juyuan array method, but there existed an advanced Juyuan array method as well, one capable of gathering more than 10 times the Yuan Qi of the intermediate technique. With the Morning Star talent and the Purple Blood Alchemy technique, cultivating in an environment with 10 times the normal Yuan Qi boosted progress by more than 5-fold. To make full use of that advantage, Ye Tian also studied formation lore, trying to raise his aptitude to that of a senior formation mage, in the hope that one day he might learn the advanced Juyuan array method. That, however, was a matter for later. In the blink of an eye, 2 months passed. During that time, Ye Tian's physical power climbed to the equivalent of 80 elephant strengths. The Yin dimensional pulse, Yang dimensional pulse, Yin seesaw pulse, Yang seesaw pulse, the belt pulse, and the Chong pulse had all been tempered. Only the Ren pulse was nearly finished, and the governing Du pulse had not yet begun to temper. At the same time, his formation aptitude reached 120, finally elevating him to the rank of a high-level formation mage. Ye Tian went to the Array Mages Association, hoping to obtain a high-level Juyuan, multi-element array schematic. After asking around, he discovered that while the association did possess such schematics, they were never put up for sale. They were kept by the association's top array mage. That senior mage never sold high-level Juyuan designs, and he couldn't be bought even by someone of king-level status, because he himself was king-level. People are naturally selfish. When they possess something valuable, they want to keep it to themselves. Ye Tian understood that all too well and reluctantly gave up on buying one. There was, however, one other place that might contain the schematics, the Shanghai Array Tower. Master Shanghai had once been a top array mage, so it was likely he had at least one high-level Juyuan design among the tower's rewards. The problem was getting it. Each time the tower's first floor was cleared, it granted only a single schematic, and which schematic you received was purely a matter of luck. That made obtaining a specific high-level multi-element design from the Shanghai Array Tower extremely difficult. There was no way to farm rewards by storming the tower over and over. Everyone only got a limited number of chances. The 9th trial was the decisive one. Anyone who passed it would become the inheritor of the Shanghai King. In practice, though, challengers always stopped after the 8th layer and gave up. Ye Tian suspected why. The inheritance must be stingy, otherwise more people would risk the final test. That meant there were only 8 design blueprints available in total. Ye Tian had already cleared 3 layers and claimed 3 formation designs, leaving him with just 5 tries. Worse, the blueprint for the advanced multi-element array formation never showed up on the 4th or 5th layers. It usually only appeared around the 7th or 8th trials. His chances of getting it were therefore slim. All he could do now was hope for good luck. Chapter 129. Normally, the Array Mages Association only allowed you to take the assessment at the Shanghai Formation Tower once a year. In practice, though, you didn't always have to wait an entire year if you had the money and the right connections. Ye Tian paid a little, called in a favor, and easily secured a slot to enter the tower. He could have sneaked in, but he saw no point in making things difficult for himself. If he could go in legitimately, why not? Ye Tian began his run on the 4th layer. With his high-level formation mage training, he cleared the 4th layer with ease, and then the 5th followed just as quickly. Half an hour later, he stood on the 7th floor. The 7th layer formation was far more complex. A superposition of fire and ice, essentially 2 formation spaces woven together, a dual attribute, offensive advanced formation. The formation's power was impressive, but its flaw was just as clear. If you could find where the fire array space connected to the cold ice array space and disrupt that junction, the whole formation would collapse. Thanks to his exceptional aptitude with arrays, Ye Tian located the connection in under 10 minutes. One strike was enough to shatter it. The 7th layer fell away. Inside, instead of the multi-element schematic he'd been hoping for, he found a single high-level design scroll. He frowned when he read the title, Advanced Fire Snake Array Diagram. Useless, he muttered, disappointed. Still, he carefully stored the diagram. It might be worthless to him now, but it was worth keeping. He climbed to the 8th floor and entered a world of thunder and lightning. The air crackled. Lightning arrays, a potent and feared class of formations, filled the space. Lightning array techniques are among the strongest of formation arts, Ye Tian murmured. Before he could analyze further, a massive bolt, a torrent of electricity the size of a bucket, slammed into him. Ye Tian didn't flinch. He activated his pseudo-Upanishad's defensive talent and let it take the impact. The lightning slammed against the barrier and was absorbed without forcing him to dodge. The king of Shanghai was only a king-level cultivator. He was no match for Ye Tian's true power. The formation he had set up could not actually harm Ye Tian. If he wanted to, Ye Tian could have torn the array apart by sheer force. Yet the Shanghai king had anticipated that possibility. He had designed the formation so that if a king-level fighter attempted to smash it open, the whole formation tower would focus its power on that attacker. There were only 2 possible outcomes if someone tried to force it. They would fail to break the formation, or the entire Shanghai formation tower would collapse. Ye Tian had no desire to destroy the tower. If he did, every array mage in the Demon Sea Grand Base would hate him, and his sister would be stuck living among their hostility for a long time. He could have walked away and left the tower standing, but he wasn't ready to make a move that would doom her to such an existence. Top formation talent, he murmured to himself. He stared into the structure of the array and the inner world it contained. The thunder and lightning pattern inside unfurled before his eyes. He searched deliberately for the nodes, each junction and focal point of the pattern. The formation could not harm him, so he had all the time he wanted to study it. Node, node. Ye Tian traced them slowly, learning whatever the tower would teach. Ye Tian's formation skill was still a bit lacking. This lightning formation required an exceptionally powerful, top-tier array mage to break it, and Ye Tian's talent barely qualified him as a high-level array mage. An hour later, he finally let out a breath of relief. He had found a formation node. Even one node was enough. If he could destroy it, the formation would become unstable, other nodes would develop gaps, and the whole structure would be easy to exploit. He steadied himself and struck. "Break!" he shouted. His blow shattered the node and the entire lightning space convulsed. In the flashing chaos, several other nodes manifested across the thunder and lightning world. They flared and tried to vanish, but Ye Tian snatched them up with swift precision. "Stay there!" He focused his attacks on those points and smashed them one by one. 5 more minutes passed in a storm of light and sound, and finally the lightning space collapsed. The formation was completely broken. A design schematic materialized before Ye Tian's eyes. He opened it and examined the drawing. Excitement surged through him. Advanced multi-element array technique, Ye Tian grinned. Many high-level array mages had reached the 8th layer, but none of them had ever obtained a copy of the advanced multi-element array technique schematics, until now. With the design drawing in his hands, one of his goals had been achieved. Still curious, he pushed on into the 9th layer. There was no trial waiting for him there. Instead, a voice recorded long ago filled the chamber, and a single message shimmered into being. An inheritance left by the late king of Shang. "To the latecomer," the message began, "whether you are a high-level mage or a top-tier one, if you want the inheritance of the king of Shanghai, you must swear an oath for me. You must kill an invincible king-level practitioner named Ye Tian, that wretched woman. Swear this, and I will hand over all my treasures, my formation schematics, and even the 3 advanced Yuanli body refinement secrets. You must promise that within 50 years you will do everything in your power to slay her. If you fail, you will suffer divine death." Ye Tian's smile faded. The reward was enormous, but the price the late king demanded was darker than he had expected. "Remember, Mizuki is from the Zhongai Superbase." Those words stopped Ye Tian cold. Reading them, he finally understood why the other high-ranking mages had never passed the 9th level exam. The test wasn't a test at all, but an oath. And what an oath it was, the sort only a madman would demand. The king of Shanghai clearly hated Ye Tian of the Zhongai Superbase. Whether that hatred was justified, Ye Tian couldn't tell. But the king's condition made his feelings plain: kill Ye Tian within 50 years, or be annihilated. No benevolent ruler would leave such a poisoned pledge behind. Perhaps the king of Shanghai had been driven to this by his own injuries and losses. Whatever the cause, Ye Tian felt no inclination to get involved. He turned away without a second thought. The king's treasure wasn't worth the price demanded, and he had already reached his own goal. Rather than report the matter to the Array Mage Association, Ye Tian went straight home. There, he set the affair aside and glanced over the advanced multi-element array design blueprint spread out on his table. Triple array space. Ye Tian nodded. The so-called high-level polyuan array method was simply the superposition of 3 intermediate polyuan arrays, each occupying its own array space. To make them work together, additional formations had to be woven in to stabilize the operation and bind the 3 spaces into a single coherent whole. He understood the principle perfectly, but without a design schematic, he couldn't lay it out at all. And even with a blueprint, it would be enormous. No fewer than 125 individual arrays would have to be arranged. First things first, he told himself. Gather the materials. For the next 10 days, while continuing his cultivation, Ye Tian hunted down every component required for the advanced polyyuan array method. These weren't the simple light array disks used in lower-grade formations. He needed rare ores, exotic crystals, specially alloyed plates, and other uncommon reagents. All of it would be assembled into a formation altar and engraved with the massive array schematics. The carved diagram had to be exact for a high-level polyyuan array to function. That level of complexity and the need for those rare physical components was one of the key differences between high-level formations and intermediate or low-level ones. 10 days later, he had everything. Under cover of night, he withdrew to the underground chamber beneath the villa and began, in secret, to build the formation altar. Over the past 10 days, Ye Tian's formation mastery had climbed to 125, and the array altar was finally finished. "Inscribed," he announced. Taking up the inscription pen, he engraved one formation after another across the altar. He worked through most of the day. When the last stroke was laid, the array's inscription was complete. He dropped 10 yuan chi stones into the array hole and activated the advanced gathering element array. A deep rumble rolled out as countless strands of yuan chi poured in and coalesced into a swelling tide. Within moments, the flow steadied. 10 times more vigorous. Success! Ye Tian couldn't hide his excitement. Chapter 130. Once the high-level gathering elements array, the one that concentrates 10 times the usual yuan chi, was finished, Ye Tian could cultivate inside it at 5 times normal speed. Under the intermediate Jiyuan array, he'd only been getting a 3-fold boost. That had let him gain the equivalent of 9 elephants' worth of strength per month. With this new 5-fold acceleration, he could add at least the strength of 15 elephants in a month. 15 elephants a month. What a difference. In just over a month, I can break into Ultimate Sect Master and be qualified to challenge the king level, Ye Tian muttered to himself. He moved his own cultivation to the underground secret room immediately. He didn't tell Ye Yu about the high-level chamber. He planned to wait until after they left the Demon Sea Grand Base to mention it. For now, the intermediate secret room was more than enough for Ye Yu. She was only at the great martial artist rank. Rushing her development wouldn't necessarily be good. It was wiser for her to cultivate steadily and lay a firm foundation. After his cultivation leapt 5-fold, Ye Tian threw himself into training with even greater zeal. Day after day he practiced. Yueling came by from time to time, and their visits were short. A few exchanged words, nothing more. When she learned that Ye Tian was about to leave for the Zhonghai Superbase, she could only look on with a mixture of envy and resignation. For Yueling, the Demon Sea Great Base was likely her lot for life. If she was lucky, she might one day break through to the king level. If she was unlucky, she would remain an ultimate master forever. That bleak future was the fate of many promising talents who stayed in the Demon Sea base. Ye Tian felt helpless. There wasn't much he could do for her. It was already difficult enough to help Ye Yu raise his talent and reach a higher tier. Yueling was more of an outsider, and their relationship, while friendly, was only that, friends, nothing closer. Sometimes Ye Tian caught himself thinking that perhaps it was better for her to stay put in the Demon Sea Great Base. The Zhonghai Super Base wasn't necessarily safer. The competition there could be far more brutal, and life might be harder than here. Yueling simply wasn't suited for the Super Base. Even if she were lucky enough to be promoted to the extraordinary tier, there was no way she could rise to a king-level power there. At best, she would remain stuck in the middle or lower ranks. She lacked the innate talent. There was no reason to force her into a circle she couldn't belong to. Ye Tian's urgency to get into the super base had nothing to do with prestige. It was because the base could replicate his talent, give others what he had, and that ability made it worth pursuing at any cost. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been in such a hurry. 40 days passed. Ye Tian retreated into seclusion for all of them. Aside from the necessary breaks to eat and sleep, he spent every waking moment in the high-level cultivation chamber. When the 40 days ended, he had reached the peak, the sect master's ultimate level of cultivation. Ye Tian remembered what he had learned from the Hurricane King's cultivation. His body strength was only 100 elephant power. Even with a perfect foundation, That was essentially his physical ceiling, unless he shattered the bottleneck and advanced to the king level. The difference was fundamental. The Grandmaster realm refined the meridians. The king level worked on the body's acupoints. The human body had 365 major acupoints, and if one could open all of them, one could reach the ultimate of the king level, soaring up to 10,000 elephant power. But that final step was staggeringly difficult. In practice, very few kings ever opened all 365 points. Most managed only the first 300 or so, before progress stalled. It wasn't just a matter of talent, it was a question of resources. Each time an acupoint was opened, it devoured vast amounts of energy and material aid. Even with slow, steady cultivation, a cultivator's lifespan and the finite reserves of extraordinary resources often proved insufficient to clear every acupoint and attain the king level's pinnacle. There was only one person in the Demon Sea Grand Base who had truly reached the pinnacle of king rank: Yun Mengli. He had the full backing of the vast Yun family, and it had taken nearly 60 to 70 years, and almost all of the family's resources, to push him to that ultimate stage. Ordinary kings simply didn't have access to that kind of support. From Ye Tian's point of view, the other king-rank fighters in the Demon Sea Grand Base were far from that level. The top king-rank veterans had opened just over 200 acupoints, and fewer than 5 of them had managed to open as many as 300. Yue Ling, by contrast, belonged to the weakest tier of kings. He had opened only 3 acupoints. It was only because he had obtained the Fire Spirit Talent Grass and gained a second-grade Flame Talent that his combat effectiveness had shot up. Without that edge, he would now be among the weakest king-rank cultivators in the base. If Ye Tian stayed in the Demon Sea Grand Base, even with access to a high-grade cultivation chamber and the Morning Star talent, there was no way he could reach the ultimate king rank within 10 years. He couldn't accept that outcome. He had already reached the pinnacle of Sectmaster. He only needed to open a single acupoint to break through to the king level. The trick was sensing the exact spot of the acupoint, then striking it to create a cavity inside the meridian. Human acupoints are dormant by nature. They contain no space and must be opened. That's why top cultivators struggle to reach the king realm. The success rate for opening an acupoint is abysmally low, and a failed attempt can shatter one's foundation, making another attempt impossible. Ye Tian thought it over. He wasn't worried about a failed strike. His plan was to follow the method written in the Purple Blood Forging Body Secret Technique and deliver the shock exactly as prescribed. With that certainty, he shouted, "Purple Blood Punching Technique." This was the cultivation method detailed in the Purple Blood Forging Body Secret Technique. Ye Tian sat cross-legged and downed a large draught of king-level fierce beast blood in one gulp. Immediately his consciousness sank into his body, and he began to operate the Purple Blood Punching Technique. A surge of heaven and earth yuan qi poured in at once. The fierce beast blood and the incoming yuan qi transmuted into pure yuan li and slammed against the Cloud Gate acupoint on the Taiyin Lung meridian, the first point the Purple Blood Punching Technique had to open. With a series of violent impacts, the Cloud Gate cavity was shattered open and began to expand, forming an inner cave-like space. At first the space was small, but as Ye Tian continued to refine it, the cavity steadily widened and stabilized. It took several days of uninterrupted work to fully form and settle the acupoint space. During that time, he neither ate nor drank, remaining focused on the refining without pause. To someone on the verge of breaking into the king realm, going a month without food is nothing. Even a year without eating or drinking would be only an irritation rather than a death sentence. At that level, the body's energy needs can be completely sustained by yuan qi, though habit and appetite still make people crave food. 3 days passed. Ye Tian's Cloud Gate cave had fully opened, and yuan qi from his core began to pour into it, gradually filling the cavity. King-grade yuan li isn't kept only in the dantian, it is also stored within the body's caves, so its reserves are enormous and rarely run dry except in prolonged wars. That is why battles between king cultivators endure far longer than those between grandmasters. Once the Cloud Gate cave brimmed with yuan qi, Ye Tian's first true acupoint was finally complete. Then the metamorphosis began. A rolling, thunderous surge of yuan qi rushed through him, refining every fiber of his body and driving his flesh and spirit upward toward the king level. With each passing moment, Ye Tian felt his body changing, an evolution at the biological level. The gains in raw strength were secondary. It was the surge of vitality within him that was astonishing. Normally a grandmaster might live around 200 years and one at king rank about 500, but because Ye Tian had forged such a flawless foundation, he could have expected roughly 300 years as a grandmaster. Now that he had reached the king rank, his lifespan must have stretched beyond 500 years. Chapter 1131. I don't know how long it took, but Ye Tian's transformation was finally complete. He had become a true king. He tested himself carefully. His lifespan had expanded, at least 800 years. 800 years was already staggering, but Ye Tian wasn't satisfied. He wanted more than centuries. He wanted immortality. He had survived death 100 years ago, crossed into this era, and possessed the uncanny talent for copying others' abilities. If he didn't pursue eternal life now, wouldn't it be a waste of everything he'd been through? It's time to go, he murmured. Once his realm had stabilized, he set off for the Zhonghai superbase. Over the next few days, Ye Tian visited Yueling repeatedly, warning her that he would soon leave the Demon Sea Grand Base and asking her to help Ye Yu if trouble came. Yueling readily agreed and promised that as long as she remained at the Demon Sea Grand Base, no one would dare provoke Ye Yu. Ye Tian slid the corpse into a carry bag's hidden compartment, sealed it, then led Ye Yu down into the underground high-level cultivation chamber. Xiao Yu, this is a high-level cultivation secret room, he said as they stepped inside. You'll be cultivating here from now on. Don't reveal anything about this place to outsiders. A chamber like this will spare you a lot of trouble. Ye Yu forced a nod, but there was no excitement in it. Only disappointment and a hollow sort of resistance. She had known, even before today, that her brother was leaving again. She only didn't know for how long this time. The thought of being left alone made her chest ache. In the past, he went off hunting wild beasts and would be back in a few months at most. Now he couldn't promise when he would return. These storage bags contain most of what you'll need, Ye Tian continued, handing several compact pouches to her. All your future cultivation resources are inside them. Try not to go out hunting big beasts on your own. Ye Yu took the bags in silence. She could see it in his face. He was worried about her. That was why he kept saying she mustn't go into the wild alone. She clutched the bags to her chest and managed a small, reluctant, I understand. Ye Tian had explained everything. In the end, Xiao Jin and Xiao Zi didn't take the beasts away. After all, they already belonged to Ye Yu. With that settled, Ye Tian left the Demon Sea Grand Base and set off to the southwest. He rode on Xiao Blood's back, watching the Grand Base shrink behind them until it vanished from view. No flying predators dared challenge them on the way. Xiao Blood had already reached King Beast rank. It was a newly crowned king, still in its infancy, but its strength was comparable to a king beast that had opened 4 or 5 internal caves. Ye Tian thought that, for a bloodline talent of the Shiri grade, development ought to have been faster, but Xiao Blood said it was still in its early stage. Once it matured, its growth would likely explode. 10,000 kilometers, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. Xiao Blood flew at a steady, unhurried pace. They ran into a few other king-level flying beasts, but each was burned to ash by Xiao Blood's dragon flame before it could get close. Finally, after the long flight, Xiao Blood eased its speed. Ye Tian knew they had arrived where he wanted to go. 500,000 kilometers away, Ye Tian and Xiao Blood came upon a river that stretched on like an ocean. It seemed to have no end in sight. This is a tributary of the Yangtze, the Changling River, Ye Tian murmured. It's 10,000 kilometers across. With Xiao Blood's speed, we can get across in no time, but the river is crawling with fierce beasts. There are countless king-level beasts and even some terrors that surpass the king rank. He sounded a little rueful. With his current strength, he couldn't even claim invincibility at the king level, much less stand against opponents above that. He had to keep a low profile. Xiao Blood, fly as fast as you can, he ordered. Yes, master. Xiao Blood answered solemnly. Why? As an overlord-class dragon, It understood the danger of this river all too well. It could sense dozens of presences it couldn't contend with. Even ordinary low-bloodline beasts that had already matured would be more than a match for the infant dragon. It had to avoid them and keep moving. With a sharp cry, Xiaoblood surged into the sky, and they began their crossing, cutting across the endless water while skirting any signs of danger. Xiaoblood's speed skyrocketed, a streak of light slicing through the void. Even so, the submerged predators sensed the intrusion. The river thundered, its waters rising and arcing across the sky for 100,000 miles. From that churning surface, a horde of ferocious beasts exploded upward, filling the heavens to surround Ye Tian. King-class beasts and top-tier monsters alike bore down on them. Die! Ye Tian roared, brandishing a high-grade Yuanli sword. Sword intent erupted like a storm. Countless slivers of blade tore through the void, shredding enemies and sending fallen beasts tumbling back into the Changling River. 1,000 kilometers, 2,000, 3,000. The far bank drew nearer, but so did the number of attackers. New beasts rose from the depths as fast as he cut them down. Just as Ye Tian and Xiaoblood neared the opposite shore, a gargantuan fish shot from the water. 300 meters long, it gaped with a maw like a black hole, an illusion that seemed able to swallow sun, moon, and stars. The spectacle was meant to terrify, and yet in truth, the creature was only a king-class beast, powerful among its kind, but not invincible. Heavenly Pole Chop. Ye Tian unleashed the move with a single sweep of his sword, finally revealing the silver-grade sword technique against his foe. Blade light tore through the air like a rip in reality, moving so fast it outstripped the top speed of ordinary king-rank fighters. In an instant, the sword light cleaved the giant fish in two. Its split body slammed into the river, sending a plume of water shooting 100 meters high. The sudden force scattered the other ferocious creatures in the water, and Ye Tian landed safely on the far bank. The Changling River really isn't something an ordinary king rank can cross, Ye Tian observed. In the Demon Sea Grand Base, there are at most 5 king rank masters who could force their way through it. Xiaoblood resumed their flight. The next stretch of the journey was quiet and largely uneventful. Occasional king-rank beasts kept their distance and dared not provoke them. After 3 days of searching, because they didn't know the exact position in advance, Ye Tian and Xiaoblood finally found the Zhonghai superbase. Found it! Ye Tian breathed out in relief as he took in the enormity of the base before him. It dwarfed the Demon Sea Grand Base by at least 10 times. Scores of flying ships crowded the sky. From time to time, one would arrive from far away and touch down at a dedicated docking platform. Each of those vessels outclassed the royal windboats of the Demon Sea Grand Base by an order of magnitude. The difference was like a skiff beside an aircraft carrier. This has to be a Central Sea superbase, Ye Tian said with certainty. With a whoosh, he and Little Blood shot toward the entrance. The portal towered above them, a gate hundreds of meters high, its surface covered in dense, intricate inscriptions. As a high-level array mage, Ye Tian could immediately tell that the gate was full of top-tier formations. Not even a king-tier force could hope to disturb it. Identification. One of the king-class guards posted at the gate called out. Chapter 132. Like the Demon Sea Base, every resident of the Zhonghai Superbase carried an ID, but it was obvious that the Demon Sea Grand Base ID meant nothing here. I'm a warrior from the Demon Sea Grand Base. Do I need to complete any formalities to join the Zhonghai Superbase? Ye Tian asked. The gate guard, surprised to see a warrior from another Grand Base, peered at him. Warriors from other Grand Bases were rare sights here. A warrior from a Grand Base? He repeated. The guard, who himself was a king-rank cultivator, explained, there are 2 requirements. First, you must be king-rank. Second, you must leave an inch-long mark on the heavenly array stone steel. Once those are satisfied, you can register as a member of the Zhonghai Superbase. I'd like to take the test, Ye Tian said. Go up to the 3rd floor of the gate tower. Ask for the base entry test. Someone there will guide you through it, the caretaker replied. Thank you, Ye Tian said, bowing politely. Outside the gate tower, there were several more levels. Ye Tian stepped into the nearby Yuanli elevator and rode it up to the 3rd floor, while Xiaoblood waited at the entrance below. And then, something happened. Ye Tian blinked. then forced his face into an unreadable expression. The person in front of him really was 3 meters tall. He kept his surprise carefully hidden. In the Zhonghai Superbase, creatures that would shock outsiders could be commonplace. Showing too much curiosity here risked offending someone and starting trouble. So he watched calmly and activated his mimicry talent. A brief shimmer ran over the giant. Data flashed across Ye Tian's retinal display. Name, Sokka. Race, sorcerer. Cultivation grade, extraordinary. The entry was odd. The classification listed Sokka as a sorcerer rather than as a human, and the cultivation field read extraordinary, without any special talent noted. Sorcerers, were they simply a branch of humanity? Ye Tian's expression darkened. He figured he'd learn more once he was inside the superbase. Before he could think further, one of the base's human officers approached him. "Do you have any questions?" The sectmaster's tone had been curt. There was little respect in it. Ye Tian noticed and, from that, understood something important. A king-rank cultivator did not hold much prestige at the Zhonghai Superbase. Back at the Demon Sea Grand Base, a sectmaster would have treated someone of king rank with deference. Here, that status meant far less. "I'm here to take the base admission test. Could you take me there?" Ye Tian asked. "Yes." The sectmaster led him down winding corridors to a vast chamber. At its center stood a towering stone stele, undoubtedly the Tianjing stone stele. Its surface hummed with faint, ancient power. A moment later, a cultivator approached. She moved with assured, dignified steps, middle-aged female, and radiating a cultivation aura that bordered on the peak of king rank. Ye Tian's instincts cataloged her at once. Name, Wang Yan. Cultivation talent, extraordinary sword talent, advanced speed talent, medium. Strong, Ye Tian thought. Wang Yan's sword aptitude was high. Given her age and mastery, she likely understood a few percent of the sword Dao already, and had cultivated a silver-grade sword technique. She was someone not to be underestimated. Taken together with the other's cultivation, his combat power was only a hair below the Invincible King tier, roughly on par with Wang Yan. "Kid, how about joining our Zhonghai Superbase?" Wang Yan asked with a smile. "How do you know I'm young?" Ye Tian bristled at the nickname. Everyone here was a king-level cultivator. Calling someone kid felt rude. Wang Yan chuckled. "Your life aura is far too vibrant. No concealment at all. It doesn't have the tempered calm of an elder king. I'd guess you're only in your 20s. My sister is already in her 80s, so it's no offense to call you kid, right?" Ye Tian's expression tightened. He realized Wang Yan's own life aura was unusually faint, not dying, but deliberately veiled. "Does the superbase teach techniques to conceal one's life aura?" he asked, curiosity getting the better of him. "Yes, it's a rare piece, a bit precious," Wang Yan said with a sly smile. "But a royal-grade technique can be taught for a price. Kid, if you can leave a 10-inch mark on it, how about your sister gives you a secret art that can hide your life breath?" "Really?" Ye Tian's interest was piqued. Wang Yan had looked him over and noticed the boy's life breath was unusually vigorous. The thought of getting that secret technique clearly tempted him. Ye Tian leaned forward. "Really?" Wang Yan nodded. "Really." "And how much force does it take to leave a 10-inch mark?" Ye Tian asked, glancing at the heavenly array stone tablet. Wang Yan answered, "That tablet's made from special materials and inscribed with a top-tier formation that can withstand power beyond the Wang level. To scar it by 10 inches, you'd need the strength of 1,000 elephants. 1,000 elephants worth of power." Ye Tian's face clouded as he did the math. He had just broken through to the king level. His base physical strength was the equivalent of 150 elephants. After stabilizing his realm, it rose to 200. With a boost from Yuan Force, it could be pushed to 400, and with the 30-fold amplification from his quasi-mystical power talent, it would spike to the equivalent of 12,000 elephants. He couldn't reveal his silver-rank sword technique. If he did, the combined attack power would be absurd. So he decided to rely only on the quasi-mystical amplification. Ye Tian formed his grip and slashed at the heavenly array stone tablet, quietly channeling the quasi-mystical power talent. The sword light tore across the steel with a thunderous crack, leaving a clear cut. Wang Yan stepped forward to inspect it. "A 12-inch mark," he declared. "Congratulations, you've passed and are officially admitted to the Zhonghai Superbase." He reached into his robes, produced a sealed manual, and tossed it to Ye Tian. "This is your reward." Ye Tian didn't bother to study the card. He just slipped it away and said, "Thanks. Come on, I'll take you through the rest of the formalities." Wang Yan moved quickly, guiding Ye Tian from one desk to the next. Before long, Ye Tian was handed an official ID for the Zhonghai Super Base. Later, in an office on the third floor of the gate tower, Wang Yan sat back and studied Ye Tian's file. He murmured to himself, "Perfect foundation. Not many people in the super base ever reach that, and now there's one here." He frowned. Which veteran had taken this kid as a disciple? Even powerful families at the super base seldom had the resources to cultivate a perfect foundation for someone, unless an elder of extraordinary standing personally accepted them. For such a young person to already be at king level and possess a perfect foundation meant his innate talent had to be at least morning star caliber, maybe even glowing moon. Hey, give him a small gift. That should win him over. It's good to be friends with someone strong. Ye Tian remembered Wang Yan's voice nagging him like that. Once inside the super base, he was hit by how many different people and races crowded its streets. Squads of witches in their black robes, and a curious Terran variant with a third eye, three-eyed Terrans, alongside other Terran peoples he'd never seen. His curiosity pulled him deeper into the maze of alleys until he found a modest inn, rented a room, and shut the door to the hubbub. He unpacked the unmarked book Wang Yan had slipped to him. When he opened it, a single line stood out at the top of the first page: Turtle Breath Arcane. The technique itself took up only that one page, but the rest of the book was full: detailed dossiers on the Zhonghai Super Base, profiles of the major Terran races, and a short history of how the base had come to be. He smiled and shook his head. Wang Yan had seen him for what he was, a rookie who knew nothing about this place, and still gone out of her way to help. If making friends with a powerful person was an investment, this was a generous one. He accepted her kindness gratefully. The gift was exactly what he needed to start fitting into the super base. Chapter 133. The turtle breath technique was simple in principle. It was an application of the 8 pulses of the Qi Jing designed to gather and conceal one's breath. Once the 8 pulses had been properly quenched, the turtle breath could be cultivated. It took Ye Tian about half an hour to fully gather his breath. "Now, no one can sense my age or life force. It's hidden," he murmured, relieved. He went back to studying the files on the super base. The more he read, the more stunned he became. He kept reading for hours until he had absorbed every detail. Then he finally understood the origin of the super base. The super base hadn't been built by ordinary people a century ago. It had been constructed by people from the secret realm. 100 years earlier, space rifts had opened, and vast numbers of ferocious beasts poured through. Humanity's heat weapons were useless against them. Civilization teetered on the brink of extinction. It was at that desperate moment that the secret realm appeared. The secret realm is connected to Earth by spatial rifts, and it is not empty of people. Humans have lived there, too. In the distant past, Earth still supported life, though far less abundantly than it does today. Some people either stumbled into the secret realm or deliberately entered it to escape calamity. Isolated from the outside world, they recuperated and adapted to the realm's strange environments. A little over a century ago, things changed. New rifts opened between the secret realm and Earth, and contact was reestablished. Humans who had long since adapted, and in many cases mutated, in the secret realm began to reappear on Earth. It was a process similar to how human populations evolved different skin colors in different climates. The peculiar peoples of the secret realm had mutated or evolved in response to their own varied habitats. In the present era, these beings are called ancient humans. They differ noticeably from modern humans and often possess unusual talents. For example, there are three-eyed people. Among them, a minority display special powers centered in the third eye. Such cases remain rare, but they are one of the clearest signs of the secret realm's influence on human evolution. Take, for example, the witches. Rumor has it they go all the way back to the Yanhuang era, to a time before the fall of the Nine Dawns, when some humans retreated into a secret realm and multiplied in isolation. Their bodies were already tougher than ordinary humans, and after generations of evolution inside that realm, they eventually grew to stand 3 meters tall. When the Great Change reshaped the Earth, those ancient humans sensed the renewed vitality and the abundance of fierce beast resources beyond their refuge. They emerged from the secret realm, its own resources largely exhausted by centuries of use, and joined forces with modern humans to build the superbases that now resist the beasts. At first, modern humanity depended heavily on these ancient lineages. They produced warriors, elite warriors, great warriors, even master-level strongmen, so they were highly effective in holding back the monsters. Because of that strength, the superbases were able to shelter huge populations. For example, Zhonghai Superbase holds about 30 million people, roughly 3 times the population of the Demon Sea Grand Base. The China Sea Superbase wasn't unique. There were other superbases, but they lay far apart and had little contact with one another. In the region where this particular base had been built, the ancient humans had once held sway. They were never as numerous as modern humans, however, and over generations the latter had grown steadily stronger. By now, the power gap had all but closed. Modern humans were on par with the ancients, and perhaps even a little stronger. Wang Yan had added one caveat, though. He'd mentioned that among the ancient people there might once have existed a few terrifyingly powerful individuals. They lived for ages. No one really knew how long or how potent they were, and they seemed to appear only rarely. Ye Tian murmured, then let a small smile spread across his face. This superbase is even more interesting than I thought. Among the files Wang Yan had handed over was also a ranking of the major powers. The largest force in the ranking was the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall. It was a loose, decentralized organization, but its influence was enormous. Most of Zhonghai Base's inhabitants were members. Many people had formally registered as mercenaries with the hall, taking contracts and receiving payment through it, so the Tomahawk network reached into almost every corner of the base. Second in strength was Qinzong, a sect whose leadership and upper ranks were composed entirely of the Qin people. The Qin are descendants of a group of humans who fled into a secret realm during the Qin dynasty and reproduced there. They otherwise resemble modern humans, but both men and women wear their hair long, which makes them easy to spot. In third place stood the Witch Temple, founded and run by the witches, an insular people who refused to accept outsiders. They worshipped the witch god Xuan Yu, a witch who had been killed by the Yellow Emperor. Xuan Yu's death drove the witches into the secret realm for safety, and only recently had they begun emerging again and reintegrating into the wider human world. The witches, however, were deeply suspicious of outsiders, and they were displeased to see humans being admitted into the witch god temple. The Qin sect, by contrast, didn't care. Apart from its high-ranking leadership, much of the Qin sect's middle and lower ranks were made up of ordinary humans, so their presence felt natural. Fourth in influence was the Scattered Cultivation Alliance. It was a coalition for those who belonged to no sect and no family. Wandering warriors with no patron force tended to join its ranks. The alliance operated like a marketplace. Its members could trade freely, and even its leaders could request aid, but every transaction had to be reciprocal. Gifts were rare. Everything had to be balanced. That principle of equivalent exchange let the Scattered Cultivation Alliance expand quickly and without restraint, and even solitary travelers of king rank and above were willing to enlist under its banner. Half of the power in Zhonghai Superbase was held by the 4 great powers. The other half was controlled by the major clans. Those clans were united and influential enough that even disciples from the 4 powers wouldn't dare cross them. The Independent Cultivators Alliance suited Ye Tian perfectly. For one thing, it operated on a principle of equivalent exchange. As long as there were resources, he could trade for the treasures he needed. Even high-level deals, items of warrior or king rank, had to be conducted on an equal exchange basis, or the alliance would step in and impose sanctions. The more Ye Tian learned about the alliance, the more it appealed to him. Another advantage was that the alliance didn't prohibit private forces. Individuals were free to form their own small groups so long as they didn't grow into large, rival powers. Such groups were tolerated rather than expelled. That fit Ye Tian's plans exactly. I'll buy a property and then join the Independent Cultivators Alliance, he decided. Over the next few days, Ye Tian took care of the practicalities. He activated a bank card and sold off some materials, turning them into a substantial sum of money. Currency in the Zhonghai Superbase isn't the same as in the Demon Sea Superbase. At the current rate, 1 Zhonghai dollar is worth 10 Demon Sea yuan. Ye Tian exchanged a large sum and came away with 3 billion Zhonghai dollars, the equivalent of 30 billion Demon Sea yuan. The Zhonghai Superbase is divided into many districts, and some are mostly populated by ancient humans. Ye Tian naturally avoided those areas and looked for a place among the modern human neighborhoods. He settled on a large villa in the Mirror Lake district, a predominantly modern human area, paying about 2 billion for it. After moving in, he bought everyday supplies and registered a pet license for Xiao Blood. With the house, the provisions, and the pet paperwork taken care of, this became his true residence in the Zhonghai Superbase. Chapter 134. The Mirror Lake branch of the Scattered Cultivation Alliance looked more like a marketplace than a sect hall. Ye Tian had come to trade, and as soon as he stepped inside, he was struck by the bustle. Dozens of stalls, masters hawking wares, and even king-level figures had set up booths to sell rare treasures. A huge public screen filled one wall, scrolling listings of items for sale alongside contact numbers so buyers and sellers could arrange trades directly. He scanned the screen and saw all manner of treasures. Even a high-level Yuanli body-forging secret technique was on offer. In a great base, such a technique could revive an entire family. Here it was displayed casually, like any other commodity. Ye Tian couldn't help but sigh at the vast gap between ordinary major bases and the superpower strongholds. He wandered the market and bought formation components, preparing to set up a high-level Juyuan array method. Without that array arrangement, his cultivation progress would be much slower. The Heaven and Earth Yuan Qi in the Super Base was far richer than in the Demon Sea Grand Base. With the advanced Juyuan array installed, cultivation speed could be increased 6-fold, or even more. When Ye Tian checked his own abilities, he noticed his replication talent's effective radius had grown to 1,500 meters, up from 1,000 after his promotion to king level, a welcome improvement. As he scanned the crowd, the identification system kept firing off alerts. Extraordinary level cultivation talent, top-tier cultivation talent, advanced cultivation talent. Ye Tian surveyed a number of people and confirmed the assessment. Extraordinary level talents made up roughly 10%, while about 60% were top-tier cultivators. It was clear the Superbase was stocked with exceptional talent. By comparison, the Morningstar cultivation talent was seldom seen in the Zhonghai Grand Base, where it always marked someone as a first-class genius. Found! Ye Tian spotted someone in the Scattered Cultivation Alliance who possessed Morningstar cultivation talent, a young man, but clearly a high-ranking figure in the branch, possibly even above king level. Copy, Ye Tian thought. Without a word, he copied the other person's Morningstar cultivation talent. That branch of the Scattered Cultivation Alliance had only this single Morningstar talent. No second one ever turned up. Before long, Ye Tian had gathered the materials needed to set up the high-level Juyuan array method. He also traded away some items, and to his surprise, ended up with more money than he started with. He didn't need that much cash, though. Some things in the Scattered Cultivation Alliance were only obtainable by barter. Money couldn't buy them at all, so turning everything into currency would have been wasteful. He paused, thinking, I wonder if there are any treasures in the Alliance that can be upgraded to extraordinary grade cultivation talent? Ye Tian wanted to buy a treasure that would let his sister reach the royal level with ease. He searched for a long time before finally finding something promising. Liushen liquid raises a warrior's cultivation talent to the extraordinary level. Transaction requirement must provide a treasure that grants medium flame talent. The price was steep. The required exchange item, a treasure that grants medium flame talent, was unbelievably rare. Still, the listing gave Ye Tian a sliver of hope. If such an item could be traded here at the Zhonghai Superbase, then treasures capable of elevating a warrior to the extraordinary level did exist on the market. He kept looking. There were top-tier Yuanli body-forging secret techniques listed, but their trade conditions were far beyond his means. He didn't qualify to buy any of them. The Scattered Cultivation Alliance also offered various items meant to aid in breakthrough attempts, but each was outrageously expensive. Most were available only by barter, and clearly out of reach for ordinary people like him. Ye Tian had thought himself well off, but a glance at the transaction postings on the Scattered Cultivation Alliance's bulletin board quickly humbled him. After checking the prices and fees, he left the branch office and went home with a much lighter wallet than he'd imagined. He set to work arranging the advanced Juyuan formation in his private space. It took several days to complete the high-level pattern, but when it was done, he finally had a proper high-level cultivation chamber inside the Zhonghai super base. He decided not to cultivate for the moment. He still had one copying opportunity left and wanted to use it first. He only needed to copy one more Morningstar cultivation aptitude. His own innate talent could be adapted later, and with so many powerful cultivators in the Zhonghai Superbase, finding a Morningstar aptitude shouldn't be impossible. So Ye Tian went out to look. The Zhonghai Superbase was enormous, more like a province than a settlement, and its population was spread thinly. His detection radius of 1,500 meters didn't encompass many people at all, which made locating a Morningstar aptitude difficult. He had barely started when a sudden, loud noise ripped through the air. "Come on!" The moon spirit immortal of the lunar god sect against Qin He, the young genius of the Qin sect, right now at the Tomahawk Duel Arena in Jinghu District. Moon Spirit Fairy versus Prince Qin He? That's huge. Hurry up, don't dawdle. If the duel starts before we get there, we'll miss it. The Moon Spirit Fairy is my goddess. She's definitely going to win. Moon Spirit Fairy? Qin He? Ye Tian's interest was piqued. He didn't care about the admirers ogling the beautiful woman. He cared about talent. If these people called someone a genius, that person had to be a true rising star. Curious, he fell in with the crowd and followed them. They soon reached the Tomahawk Duel Arena. The arena was part of the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall's entertainment complex and the sanctioned venue for settling disputes by combat. It was the only place in the district where grudges could be legally resolved with no holds barred. Fighting anywhere else was strictly forbidden. In function and reputation, it was much like the Demon Sea Grand Base. Humans were always outnumbered by the ferocious beasts. If they kept turning on one another, today you kill me, tomorrow I kill you, there would be no chance for humanity to recover or advance. That was why Zhonghai Superbase maintained such draconian security. Even the most covert assassinations were tracked down and stopped. When Ye Tian stepped into the Tomahawk dueling arena, he found two young men battling inside one of the rings. A massive defensive shield, a specialized formation, enveloped the arena. Even if both combatants reached king-level cultivation, they couldn't break through it, so the crowd outside remained completely safe. "Begin copying their talent profiles," the system announced. Ye Tian's eyes never left the fighters as he watched their abilities being scanned and cataloged. Qin He, cultivation talent. Extraordinary, strength talent, advanced, battle talent, medium, marksmanship talent, medium, Li Yueling, cultivation talent, Morningstar, Luna talent, medium, sword talent, top, water curtain talent, primary. Qin He is only an extraordinary? Ye Tian blinked in surprise. He had assumed the two men's gifts were comparable, but Qin He's cultivation rank was far lower than Li Yueling's Morningstar level. The gap was obvious. It didn't take Ye Tian long to see why Qin He had earned his reputation. Qin's fighting aptitude was exceptional. His advanced strength, even when combined with only a mid-level marksmanship, produced a devastatingly effective combat style. That raw combat power let him crush opponents of the same rank, masking the shortcomings in his cultivation and making him look like a genuine prodigy. Chapter 135. First, copy the Morningstar cultivation talent. The moment Ye Tian thought it, he duplicated Li Yueling's Morningstar cultivation talent. With the technique copied, he turned his full attention to the fight. Although both Li Yueling and Qin He were king-level cultivators, Li Yueling was clearly the stronger. The crucial difference was the number of acupoints they had opened. By Ye Tian's estimate, Li Yueling had unlocked at least 200, while Qin He had barely opened more than 30. That alone made Li Yueling's combat effectiveness at least equal to, if not greater than, Qin He's. Ye Tian's verdict was simple: Li Yueling should win. What confirmed his judgment was Li Yueling's lunar god talent. It was only a mid-level lunar god talent, but when activated, a shadowy lunar figure materialized behind him. The talent provided a broad, all-around enhancement, sharpening his speed and reflexes, boosting his strength, and accelerating his recovery. In short, it was a comprehensive augmentation that made Li Yueling far more formidable in battle. Ye Tian felt no interest. Trying to be well-rounded only made someone mediocre, and his aptitude for the moon god arts was fairly weak, a poor fit for him. By contrast, Li Yueling's sword cultivation was a silver-ranked technique of great power, refined to perfection. It could amplify his attacks 11-fold. The duel dragged on, sparks flying, until at last Li Yueling met Qin He's spear with his sword, sent the spear spinning aside, and claimed victory by the smallest of margins. The crowd erupted. Ha! Of course the Moon Spirit Fairy wins. Of course, Qin He's challenged the Moon Spirit Fairy so many times. Has he ever won once? Others scoffed. Even I couldn't help wondering, why did Qin He keep challenging the Moon Spirit Fairy again and again? That's because I didn't win. I'll win next time. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Qin He's face darkened as he spat out, Li Yueling, next time I'll beat you. Li Yueling answered calmly, almost casually, as if stating a fact rather than being sneering. You won't get the chance. You're only an extraordinary level talent. I'm a morning star talent. You should know the difference. With my gift, there's a 70 to 80% chance I'll break into the holy rank. You? Maybe 1% at best of ever reaching saint level. In the whole Zhonghai superbase, there are barely a handful of demons who've ever ascended to holy rank from the extraordinary level. Do you really think you can do it? Qin He bristled. No one can predict the future. Besides, with my talent, I'm expected to reach 5-star king-level combat strength. I can go toe-to-toe with weaker saints. Can you even reach 5-star king level? Li Yueling didn't dare shout the words outright, but he still snapped. So what? Even if you manage to reach the 5-star king tier, I've already reached the holy level. Your fighting strength would still be beneath mine. There's no point in arguing. This is a small conflict. Why do you keep picking fights with me? With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Qin He sitting in the audience with a face full of resentment. Ye Tian quietly jotted down the two terms he'd heard, holy level and 5-star king level. He'd vaguely heard of the holy level before. It was supposed to be a realm above the king level, and the Demon Sea Grand Base didn't have anyone of holy level strength. But the 5-star king tier was new to him. The presence of king in the phrase suggested it was a subdivision within the king level, he guessed. I'd better learn more about the China Overseas Superbase, or I won't even understand what people are talking about, Ye Tian thought helplessly. Ye Tian had finished copying the Morningstar talent into his palm. With that accomplished, he went out and bought a basic knowledge encyclopedia, an introductory compendium covering everything about the Zhonghai Superbase. The book was enormous, far thicker than any dictionary he'd seen before. When he got home, he didn't open the encyclopedia right away. Instead, he set about fusing the Morningstar talent. Fusion, he commanded. The familiar, searing pain hit him immediately. This time, the fusion was upgrading the talent into a Huiyue-level cultivation talent, and the agony was far worse than before. He gritted his teeth and endured it. 10 minutes later, a notification appeared. Cultivation talent, Hui level. Ye Tian felt a surge of excitement and immediately tested his cultivation acceleration. The result was staggering. His cultivation speed had tripled. He stared, horrified. Originally, he'd estimated that, training in the Zhonghai Superbase's advanced cultivation chamber without any acupoint-breaking treasure, he could open about 5 acupoints a month. Now, with his cultivation talent mutating to the Huiyue level, that rate had tripled, roughly 15 acupoints a month. Each acupoint he opened and activated boosted his physical strength by the equivalent of about 25 to 26 elephants. At 15 acupoints a month, that added up to nearly 400 elephants worth of strength in a single month. At that pace, he could reach the pinnacle of the king rank in just 2 years. Ye Tian stared, stunned by the sheer power of the Huiyue talent. It was outrageously strong. There were probably only a handful of people at Zhonghai Superbase with anything like it. Forcing his excitement down, he steadied himself and turned to study the base's basic information. 2 days later, Ye Tian finally had a clear understanding of the Zhonghai Superbase. It finally clicked for Ye Tian. The 5-star king designation wasn't a separate class of fighter at all, but a subdivision within king-level power. At the top end, king-level strength is broken into star rankings. An ordinary king-level cultivator without extraordinary talent, upon reaching the king-level apex, is considered a 1-star king, the starting point. From there, the scale runs from 1-star up through 9-star. Anything as high as 8 or 9-star is practically legendary. No one could say for sure whether anyone had truly reached those heights. In Zhonghai Grand Base, there was an official Kings list that recorded the rankings of anyone at 3 stars and above. Those rankings, and the star ratings themselves, were determined by performance inside the Ares Tower, the God of War Tower. Only by entering the tower and fighting could a king win a star rating and a place on the list. If you never set foot in the tower, you could never be ranked, and you never gained the reputation that came with it. There were other benefits to achieving a high ranking on the God of War Tower, benefits everyone coveted. Yet the tower wasn't even listed in the Basic Knowledge Encyclopedia, and Ye Tian had no idea what it really was. God of War Tower, he muttered, curiosity prickling. The brief encyclopedia note said the tower used virtual world technology. A person's consciousness didn't die when it entered it. That sounded almost supernatural, a cross-era treasure of sorts. How it had been acquired was a mystery. Ye Tian's excitement shot up, but he didn't want to rush in unprepared. If he went now, he probably wouldn't place well, so he decided to strengthen himself first. He spent a month cultivating in the high-level secret training chamber at home. After that month, his physical power registered at 680 elephant power. With Yuan Force amplification equipped, along with the pseudo-Upanishads, grade power talent, and the silver-rank sword technique Heavenly Pole Chop, his attack power could spike to 489,600 elephant power. By comparison, an ordinary king-level ultimate attack only reached about 20,000 elephant power. Ye Tian's output was roughly 24 times that of a typical king-level peak. Raw offensive strength like that was rare at the king level, but a Star King's overall combat rating wasn't determined by attack alone. Speed, defense, and miscellaneous talents all mattered. Ye Tian's offense was perversely high, but his speed and defenses were relatively weak. Fortunately, he possessed a space T, a lent, a bug of an ability, that made up for many of those shortcomings. How many Star Kings worth of combat power does this make me? Ye Tian wondered, excitement welling up inside him. Chapter 136. The Tower of the God of War rose over the China Sea Superbase like a golden spear. Located at the base's central hub in the Mediterranean sector, the tower soared 1,000 meters into the sky, its gilded surface humming with a peculiar energy. That aura created a no-fly zone, extending 10 miles in every direction. Even king-level fighters couldn't take to the air while within its field. Everyone had to enter through the tower's gates like ordinary visitors. A huge screen stood before the tower, displaying 3 ranked lists. King's List, Saints List, Emperor's List. People lingered around, eyes fixed on the screen. The lists were a constant source of gossip. New entries sparked excitement, and any disappearance set tongues wagging. Among the crowd, Ye Tian watched the rankings with the same interest as everyone else. List of Kings. First place, Wind and Blood, Tomahawk Mercenary Hall, 7-star combat strength. List of Kings. Second place, Qin Jantian, Qin Clan, 7-star combat strength. The top of the list was filled with familiar names. Nearly all of the highest-ranked talents were disciples of the 3 great powers, the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall, the Qin Sect, and the Witch God Temple. They were genuine disciples, not casual affiliates. Although the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall cultivated an image of a loose, freewheeling organization, that appearance was deceptive. It did take on true disciples and nurtured a core membership. The dozens of small mercenary branches that had appeared over the years were little more than peripheral offshoots. Merely signing up as a mercenary didn't make someone a member of the Tomahawk Hall. Otherwise, the whole base would be counted as disciples. Beyond those three powers, many names on the list came from the scattered Cultivation Alliance and the Great Clans. After all, the Alliance's independent cultivators and the children of the prominent families produced plenty of prodigies as well. The Holy List. Ye Tian studied it closely. The roster only held 100 names, entry reserved for true prodigies, those with Morningstar cultivation talent, and even the rarer Huiyue-level geniuses. That alone made the list worthy of his full attention. By contrast, the king rank roles were endless. Thousands had risen to 3-star combat strength and beyond. But on this 100-name holy list, one entry froze him. Ye Tian, 8th on the holy list. He remembered the oath sworn in the Shanghai Formation Tower at the Demon Sea Grand Base. The king of Shanghai had demanded that anyone taking his inheritance must swear to kill Ye Tian within 10 years. Fail to do so, and the oath would annihilate their divine form. Ye Tian's face went hard. The Shanghai king wanted someone to eliminate a saint-ranked genius within a decade. Was he mad? Ye Tian sat 8th among saints. Killing her was no small task. If anyone actually took that vow, they were courting certain death. When the 10 years were up, their divine body would be destroyed. He let out a short, incredulous laugh. He also guessed that when the king of Shanghai returned to the Demon Sea Grand Base badly wounded, Ye Tian had probably still been only a king. But after so many years, Ye Tian hadn't merely reached the saint realm, he had become a terrifying existence at the 8th saint level. With that thought, Ye Tian let the matter drop and turned his attention to another list, the Emperor list. Ye Tian already knew there was a level beyond the saint realm, the imperial level. Anyone who reached imperial status was called an emperor, and a single emperor could found a top-tier power, the Scattered Cultivation Alliance, the Witch God Temple, the Qin Sect, the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall, and so on. The number of emperors under a faction showed its real strength. Among known forces, the War God Mercenary Hall had the most emperors and was the strongest. It was even called the largest power, the first super base of the Middle Sea. There weren't many names on the list, only 36. These were the 36 emperors of the Middle Sea superbase, and the most recent addition had reached that stature 3 years ago. The first of the 30 emperors is Tomahawk the Great, the display intoned. Tomahawk, founder of the renowned Tomahawk Mercenary Hall. I'll become an emperor for sure. Ye Tian clenched his fists, brimming with confidence. They stepped into the God of War Tower. A shadowy figure materialized in front of Ye Tian, something the others didn't seem to notice. Around him, people were speaking to empty air. Their mouths moved as if in conversation with invisible companions. Ye Tian realized each of them probably had one of those shadow figures too. The apparition spoke in a cool, impersonal voice. I am a doppelganger, an avatar of one of the countless artifacts housed in the God of War Tower. Our records show you are not registered as a tower member. Would you like to register? Only registered challengers may attempt the trials. Spirit? Ye Tian blinked. He'd read about constructs and spirits in novels, but seeing one here made him hesitate. Then he reminded himself that this era was full of devices and cultivated arts. A manifested avatar wasn't so impossible, even if he'd never encountered one before. All right, register me, he said. Jiling stepped forward and handed him a registration form. Ye Tian took it and filled in the required information, pen moving steadily as the tower's shadow watched in silence. Name? Terran species, modern human. King level. Affiliation, Scattered Cultivation Alliance. The registration was straightforward. No tricks, no hidden clauses. If someone wanted to conceal their cultivation talent, they wouldn't bother registering at all. Ye Tian finished the simple paperwork and was about to step away when a shaft of light shot into his right wrist. A mark bloomed on his skin. A calm voice, inside his head, explained, "This is the God of War seal. You can communicate with it mentally. It will tell you your rank and your points." Points? Ye Tian blurted, more curious than alarmed. He had never heard of such a thing. It was a blind spot in his knowledge. The basic information had never been introduced to him, so he truly didn't know what points were. Jiling explained patiently, points are a reward unique to the God of War Tower. At the start of each king level, your points reset to 0. The tower has 33 layers. Clearing the first layer grants 1 point, the second grants 2 points, and each layer after that doubles the points awarded. Points can be spent to access the God of War monument, she continued. The monument can help a practitioner deepen their sword comprehension and sharpen their sword intent. It can even assist with higher esoteric teachings and other kinds of transformative breakthroughs. And once you reach the 6-star king rank, there are even greater surprises waiting. God of War monument. Ye Tian's mind raced. He remembered the heavenly tablet of enlightenment he'd seen in the beast world. Perhaps the two were the same sort of treasure. Thinking of the tablet's benefits, his excitement grew. He had assumed the heavenly monument of enlightenment would be out of reach for a long time, yet here was a comparable treasure already present in the tower. Points, he mouthed, eyes bright. I have to earn points. Jiling only smiled at his enthusiasm. Ye Tian's resolve hardened. He would start accumulating points, no matter what it took. He hadn't forgotten the other purpose of his trip, to find Huiyue-level cultivators and other relatively powerful talents. But now he ran into a problem. Ye Tian discovered, to his surprise, that even his invincible copying talent couldn't read people's abilities inside the God of War tower. Some force in the underworld was interfering with his detection, not a complete block, but a compression. His power only worked within a tiny radius. He could only see someone's talent if they were within 3 meters of him. How many people could he realistically scan in that range? He shook his head. Forget it. For now, he would guard the door and inspect anyone who came out, checking them one by one. Still, he needed points, so he decided to take the challenge himself. Instrument spirit, I want to challenge the first floor of the God of War tower, Ye Tian said. Ye Tian, come with me. Jiling replied and escorted him to a small chamber containing a helmet-like device. Once Ye Tian stepped inside, the door closed behind him. He would not be disturbed. Put on the helmet. Your soul will enter the first level of the virtual world. There you will meet your opponent, defeat them, clear the first layer, and earn 1 point, Jiling said. Ye Tian sat down and fit the helmet over his head. A thunderous rumble rolled through him. The world seemed to shift. Light flared behind his eyelids, and when it cleared, he found himself standing on a small patch of land. Chapter 137. A black-clad warrior appeared in front of Ye Tian. He looked grim and expressionless, as if he had no feelings at all. Copy my talent, the figure intoned. Ye Tian tried to read the opponent's talent, but his senses came up empty. The warrior wasn't a real person, but a constructed simulacrum. No wonder nothing registered. The black-clad warrior moved to strike. In a blur, Ye Tian countered and cut it down. The second foe fell as quickly as the first. There was no suspense. Ye Tian assessed it coolly. Too weak, roughly equivalent to an ordinary king-level combatant, the lowest 1-star king rank. Breaking the first layer increased Ye Tian's points by 1, but it did nothing for his standing. Only those who reached the 3-star king level qualified for the top of the king list. His soul withdrew, and his spirit companion appeared before him. Ye Tian, do you want to continue to the second layer? The spirit asked. Yes. Ye Tian replied. A rumble rolled through the tower as his soul surged forward. When the sound faded, he found himself in a new space, the second level of the God of War tower. Ye Tian ran into another black-clad warrior. This one was far stronger than the last. Its speed, strength, and defense all outmatched the first-layer opponent. Yet Ye Tian cut it down in only 2 moves. He broke through the second layer and earned 2 points. On the third layer, the enemy's speed rivaled Ye Tian's, even surpassing it at times. Fortunately, Ye Tian's heavenly pole slash could double his attack speed, allowing his strikes to land faster than the opponent could react. Otherwise, it would have been nearly impossible to hit. He finished that foe in 3 moves, cleared the third layer, and gained 4 more points. His total was now 7 points. It didn't seem like much, but every single point was precious. Outside the Tower of the God of War, a new name had just appeared at the bottom of the list of kings. List of Kings, 23, Ye Tian, Scattered Cultivation Alliance, 3-star Combat Strength. On the king list, people always paid attention to the few names at the very top, and oddly, the one at the very bottom. The last place tended to stand out more than the middle ranks. So when a new name, Ye Tian, suddenly appeared in the final spot. Everyone started talking. Ye Tian. That's an odd name. Do we have a genius called Ye Tian at Zhonghai Superbase? I know a Ye Tian, but he's just a regular martial artist. Definitely not this one. There are a lot of people named Ye Tian, but none of them are on the genius level. Who is this Ye Tian, and how did he just show up as a 3-star king? How far do you think he'll climb? I'd say he can break the top 1,000. He just cleared the 3rd level, so he hasn't even had time to attempt the 4th yet. Even if he hasn't passed the 4th, rankings also take timing into account. He should be able to get into the top 1,000. Maybe even the top 500? Top 500? The suggestion was met with skeptical murmurs. This is a joke, the crowd scoffed. Everyone who cracks the top 500 is a top genius who's broken through the 4th layer. Ye Tian probably just got lucky and climbed a bit. There's no way he can suddenly jump into the top 500. As the murmurs swelled, Ye Tian stepped onto the 4th layer. The warrior in black waiting there was visibly faster. Even though Ye Tian had a talent that could boost his top speed by 20 times, his cultivation was still too low. He had only recently advanced to the king tier, so his actual speed at best matched that of a 3-star king, nowhere near the pace of these 4-star king opponents. Ye Tian did have a hidden ace, a spatial talent, but he hadn't planned to use it yet. He wanted to see whether he could take down the weakest 4-star king on pure strength without resorting to his space ability. Heavenly Pole Chop! Heavenly Pole Chop! Heavenly Pole Chop! Ye Tian kept shouting the move and unleashing the silver grade sword technique, the heavenly grade slash, again and again. But the blah, TK-clad warrior was slippery. Ye Tian found it almost impossible to land a solid blow. When he did connect, it was only a glancing strike that at best drew blood. The other fighters' counterattacks were relentless and precise, and Ye Tian had a hard time evading them. Fortunately, Ye Tian wasn't without defenses. His pseudo-Upanishads-level defensive talent blunted several of the enemy's strikes, and his pseudo-mystic-level diamond bone constitution let his bones absorb impact like a second layer of armor. On top of that, he possessed an exceptional healing talent that sealed wounds and restored his strength over and over, making him unusually difficult to finish off. Minutes stretched on. From the outside, spectators who could only see fragments of the battle assumed Ye Tian had failed to pass the 4th level and would be cut down the moment he entered it. As far as the king rankings were concerned, he remained at the very bottom. No one dared mock Ye Tian. A genius who could enter the ranks of the kings was a true combat prodigy. Fighters like Li Weiling and Qin He only reached the 1-star king level. They were a long way from the 3-star kings. Reaching 3 stars was incredibly difficult. It wasn't enough to have raw attack power. You needed speed or exceptional defensive talent, so you could survive a heavy hitter like the Black Warrior, and then turn the tables. A purely offensive gift rarely produced a top-tier king. That's why every major power prized relics that could boost speed or defense. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many 3-star kings. But even those organizations couldn't raise someone's defenses or speed without paying an enormous cost. 3 hours passed in the blink of an eye. Ye Tian's clothes were only slightly torn. His wounds had all been mended by his top-tier healing talent. Ye Tian's opponent in black was badly hurt. His power simply couldn't match Ye Tian's. Ye Tian hit so much harder that even a grazing blow left him grievously wounded. The injuries slowed the black-clad fighter, and in the end, Ye Tian's heavenly pole struck true. With a final, decisive blow, the weapon cut off his head, and the warrior vanished. He'd cleared the 4th floor. Ye Tian earned 8 points. Outside the God of War Tower, spectators noticed Ye Tian's name had suddenly disappeared from the lower ranks, and a shout went up. "Hey, look! Ye Tian's name is gone. Did he fall off the list?" "No, he didn't fall," someone corrected. "You can't fall from the tower like that. If he broke through the 4th floor, he would have jumped up the rankings. That's why he's not on the back pages anymore." People hurried to search the rankings. Sure enough, the list showed his new position. List of Kings, number 504, Ye Tian, Scattered Cultivation Alliance, 4-star combat strength. The ranking made everything clear. Ye Tian had broken through the 4th layer and reached 4-star king level. Good heavens, it took him that long to clear the fourth layer? Someone gasped. Maybe he hit his limit at 4 stars and had to fight that black-clad warrior for ages. Another offered. He finally killed him and only then managed to break through. If that's true, his ranking should stop there, a third said. Still, 4-star king is nothing to scoff at. In the whole Zhonghai superbase, there are only 504 people at that level. Before they could finish the sentence, another voice cut in, stunned. The list had updated again. Ye Tian's name had vanished from the 504, and when they scrolled up to the top 400, he still wasn't there. Chapter 1, 138. What's going on? People murmured in confusion. For a long moment, no one could make sense of it. How had Ye Tian's name vanished from the list? And even more inexplicable, how could he suddenly be in a different tier? Nobody had considered that Ye Tian might have broken through to the 5th layer. He had been stuck at the 4th layer for so long. A sudden leap to the 5th felt impossible. Then someone shouted, Ye Tian, his name is on the list at 86. A dozen heads turned to the list of kings. All at once the crowd went silent. The entry read, 86th, Ye Tian, Scattered Cultivation Alliance, 5-star combat strength. Those 5 words, 5-star combat strength, hit like a thunderclap. Seeing Ye Tian's name on the king's list sent shock through everyone. A 5-star rating is comparable to the weaker end of the saint tier. The gap between king and saint is vast. For someone they'd assumed still struggling in the 4th layer, to suddenly register at 5 stars and place on the king's list was beyond belief. When a cultivator reaches the king level, their power usually doesn't jump by leaps and bounds. Many talented fighters from lower tiers can still cross levels and take on kings, but breaking into the saint level is a different matter. The moment someone steps into the saint level, their body remakes itself into a saint body. Strength multiplies, speed multiplies. A newly minted saint is often 10 times stronger and faster than before. For that reason, even geniuses who can cross levels have trouble standing against a weak saint. There is, however, an exception. A king at 5-star combat power can cross levels and contend with saints. More than that, when a 5-star king breaks into the saint level, he typically becomes the strongest among saints, capable of crushing saints of the same rank. Anyone who reaches 5-star king combat power is therefore revered, a true fighting prodigy. So the murmurs that ran through the crowd were full of confusion. How had Ye Tian reached the 5th star? A minute earlier he had gone up to the 5th floor of the God of War Tower. A flash of black light had struck him there. Though he managed to dodge in time, one of his arms had still been severed. How could someone who had just lost an arm possibly break through to the 5th layer? It's several times faster than me, Ye Tian muttered, helpless. If he kept trading blows like this, he didn't stand a chance of ever landing a hit. He couldn't kill the opponent, and having the top healing talent didn't make him invincible. If he took too much damage or his skull was crushed, he'd be finished. In the virtual world, he wouldn't actually die, but he would fail the challenge, and that would ruin his chance at the God of War monument. He needed points. The more he earned, the more time he'd get to participate in the monument. He had no interest in showing off his true strength. Even if he broke through to the 5th layer, so what? There were horror kings on the ranking list who'd already reached the 7th layer. His breakthrough would barely register. At most, they'd call him a combat prodigy. The black-clad warrior lunged again. Ye Tian activated his spatial talent and teleported away just in time. Teleportation didn't depend on reflexes. As soon as your mind decided to go, you could vanish and reappear in an instant. That was why, even though the black-clad warrior moved far faster than Ye Tian, he still couldn't land a hit while Ye Tian flickered in and out of existence. Ye Tian kept experimenting with that edge. Under repeated teleportation, he slowly learned to fight back. At last, he found a momentary opening and struck, one precise blow that cut the black-clad warrior down before the enemy's space blade could be brought to bear. After clearing the 5th layer, he earned 16 points, bringing his total to 31. The 6th layer was a different story. As soon as Ye Tian materialized this time, a man in black lunged and hit him so fast, Ye Tian hadn't even started to think about teleporting. He staggered, badly wounded, before he could react. For the next several exchanges, he managed only to dodge. The man in black's speed outpaced Ye Tian's mental response. Teleportation always required the mind to initiate. If an opponent could act faster than your mind could register the threat, they could strike before you could leave. Within a minute, the virtual body before him took a fatal headshot and dissolved into particles. Ye Tian's consciousness snapped back out of the simulation. Ye Tian was surprised to find that his soul hadn't been damaged at all. Instead, it had been drawn into a virtual world. He couldn't understand it. Why had his body been killed, but his soul remained intact? The only explanation he could think of was that the God of War Tower had somehow favored him, teleporting his soul away at the last moment. The thought only made him more curious about the origin and power of the tower. When he stepped outside, his challenge was officially over, and his result was posted. List of Kings, number 62. Ye Tian, Scattered Cultivation Alliance, 5-star combat strength. A 5-star rating could mean very different things in practice, so the rankings used a tiebreaker, how quickly a contender cleared the 6th layer. Many other 5-star challengers had nearly been cut down on the 2nd layer, so their completion times were slower and they placed behind Ye Tian. His exceptional healing talent had given him a crucial edge, though it was treated as a combat skill and already factored into his rating. When the rankings were finalized, the crowd erupted. News of Ye Tian's name spread fast. On his first attempt inside the God of War Tower, he had broken into the list of kings at an astonishing 62nd place. That kind of debut was extremely rare, and people everywhere were talking about him. For a long moment, no one could believe it. At first I figured he'd be at the bottom of the king list, maybe last place, someone murmured. But 62nd? That's way higher than anyone expected. That ranking puts him up with the 4 great powers. He's practically in the top tier. Within the Scattered Cultivation Alliance, there were only 3 or 4 people who could even claim to be stronger than him. Who is this guy, anyway? Is he even a real cultivator? Another voice asked, incredulous. You really think he's self-made, that he has no backing and no ability to push against heaven? Someone scoffed. How else could he reach 5-star combat strength? And besides, his talent is all offense. That kind of one-dimensional ability might make you unbeatable against equals, but it doesn't let you leap across levels. Nobody is born without flaws. Most people use treasures or outside help to augment their talent. That requires a patron. Ye Tian has to have one, otherwise there's no way he'd be at 5-star. Could it be that a disciple, or some genius quietly groomed by a major backer inside the Scattered Cultivation Alliance, has really made it? Haha, whoever's right about that. But one thing's for sure, Ye Tian's name just became the talk of the Epicenter C Superbase. A renowned warrior had just announced Ye Tian's 62nd place on the King's list, and the news spread like wildfire. By the time the echo died down, half the martial world knew the name Ye Tian. A few senior figures from the large powers who kept close tabs on trends also gained a little extra intelligence. A link between Ye Tian and the Scattered Cultivation Alliance. That was enough to get them together. Late that afternoon, several high-ranking officials held an impromptu meeting. The room buzzed with low, urgent voices. Ye Tian, whose disciple is he? One asked. No idea, another replied. None of our old friends ever mentioned taking him on. It doesn't seem like he was raised by any of the usual powerhouses inside the Alliance. Maybe he's a raw genius who simply joined the Scattered Cultivation Alliance on his own. Should we try to poach him? Someone suggested. A senior officer shook his head. Listen, don't forget that Alliance's system. They deal in rank-based transactions. You don't tear up those rules lightly. If we start plucking their best people one by one, the Scattered Cultivation Alliance will collapse into factionalism. How many of you would really be able to resist turning the Alliance into another arm of your own forces? Silence followed. The temptation to recruit a rising star was strong, but so was the risk of losing the fragile balance that kept the Alliance whole. I haven't forgotten, not for a second. We were just curious when a prodigy from the Scattered Cultivation Alliance appeared. Ye Tian. That kid broke through to the 5th layer on his first try. He might even be able to reach the 6th, and in our Alliance, 6th layer geniuses are rare. Besides, Ye Tian has already joined the Scattered Cultivation Alliance. If other forces try to go after him, we can deal with them ourselves. There's no need to reach out to him. Agreed. Agreed. When the meeting ended, the old members dispersed. At Zhonghai Superbase, in one of the tower gates, Wang Yan sat in his office staring at the newly released list of kings. He scanned the names until he stopped cold. Ye Tian, 62nd on the list of kings. Wang Yan stared at the name for a long, stunned moment. Is it him? Wang Yan whispered. The difference in power between the two was enormous, and at first she could hardly believe it. The Ye Tian Kai she remembered could only muster an attack of about 12,000. Not even at a 1-star king level. Yet the Ye Tian on the king's list showed 5-star king level combat strength. Still, the more she looked, the more certain she became. The Ye Tian on the list was the same young man she had seen. The record said he had just arrived at the Zhonghai Superbase, looked very young, and his arrival time matched hers exactly. Same name, same arrival, same place. 2 different people was too big a coincidence. The only explanation was that Ye Tian had been hiding his true strength. I underestimated this kid, Wang Yan murmured. From what she could tell, the other party was a prodigy, a flawless foundation, the ability to break limits, and at least a pseudo-mystic level talent. Yet his cultivation had only recently reached the king tier, an impossibly rapid rise unless something else was at work. Unless... Could it be that this kid's talent is actually at least Huiwei level? Wang Yan mused. If he trains inside a high or top-grade cultivation chamber, a single month could boost his physical strength dramatically. Progress would be ridiculously fast. And if he doesn't just possess 1 pseudo-mystic talent, but 2, then there's a real chance he could reach 5-star king combat strength. She smiled to herself. How interesting. Let him grow a little first. I'll leave that opportunity to him, leave it to luck. Maybe my own chance of stepping up to the holy grade someday depends on him. Tower of the God of War. Ye Tian didn't leave. Instead, he asked Jiling, how much to enter the monument of the war god? 1 point per day, Jiling answered. Ye Tian did the math. He had 31 points. Enough for 31 days, a whole month. A month wasn't short, but what would he get out of it? A pseudo-mystic defensive talent? Some other pseudo-mystic ability? Not worth it. He could copy talents at will with his own replication ability. If he ever ran into a pseudo-mystic defense talent, he could simply copy it. There was no need to burn War God Tower points on the monument. He'd already wasted a lot of time in the world of fierce beasts, chasing pseudo-mystic defensive secrets, and had only picked up a few scraps of defensive insight. That had left him with regrets. Spending a month in the monument, hoping for some sudden enlightenment, would be equally foolish. No, he would use his time more productively. Either forge a new sword technique or grasp the true meaning of the sword. Creating a gold-grade sword technique wasn't so simple. A month was nowhere near enough. If he wanted one quickly, he could buy a gold-grade sword skill at the Zhonghai Superbase, but the price would be steep. Still, Ye Tian decided he had to try to perceive the sword intent himself. Sensing the sword intent is necessary for cultivating sword techniques, he told himself. But it will waste time. Time I don't really have. My progress with the Purple Blood Punch acupuncture method is already on a tight schedule. Even so, I have to give it a shot. Instrument spirit, I want to enter the monument of the war god, Ye Tian said to the spirit. Come with me, Jiling replied, and led him into a small chamber. An altar stood in the center. Ye Tian immediately felt a pulse of spatial power radiating from it. This is, he began. A teleportation array, Jiling supplied. Ye Tian was taken aback. He hadn't expected the War God Tower to possess a teleportation array. As far as he knew, the Zhonghai Superbase didn't have one. This must be a special feature of the tower. Ye Tian stood on the teleportation array as the instrument spirit powered it open. A flash of white light, and he was gone. The next moment he rematerialized at another formation altar. He found himself in a vast void. No ground, no sun, moon, or stars. Only a faint, diffuse light filled the space. Dominating the center was a colossal stone, stele, roughly 70 meters tall. It wasn't quite on the level of the enlightened heavenly stele from the beast world, but it was still imposing. The war god monument pulsed with strange energies that rippled through the empty expanse. Around it drifted dozens of small, levitating stone slabs. Many already held cultivators sitting upon them, as if attending some rite before the monument. Ye Tian wondered who they were. Were these geniuses from the King's List, or were some of them representatives from the Holy List and the Emperor List? He strained to find out, but his replication talent was being heavily suppressed here. He couldn't probe their aptitude or copy the 2 Huiyue-level cultivation techniques he suspected they possessed. A soft whoosh stirred the still air as he tried to decide his next move. Ye Tian moved through the air to an empty floating stone slab, settled cross-legged, and began to meditate. His arrival went unnoticed. Everyone else here came and went so constantly, their eyes fixed on the God of War monument, that no single newcomer could draw any attention. No one was willing to waste a second of time. Ye Tian focused intently and began to probe the monument, seeking to understand its sword intent. He frowned as the realization came. Its effect was noticeably weaker than the heavenly monument of enlightenment, only about 3/4 as strong. The God of War monument was simply a lower grade. He allowed himself a rueful smile. Something was better than nothing, so he kept working. After a full day of practice, he stood and left. Not because he'd grown tired of enlightenment, but because he had to use up his instance attempts first. If he delayed until next month, he'd lose 2 opportunities. With that done, he headed toward the God of War Tower. Ye Tian crouched in the press of people outside the God of War Tower, waiting for a Huiyue-level, moon-tiered genius to emerge. Someone whose talent he could copy. He waited 3 days. During that time, a number of geniuses came out, but most were only extraordinary level or morning star cultivators. Not a single Huiyue-level talent appeared, which only underscored how rare Hui talents were at the Zhonghai Superbase. Then, suddenly, a very cold-faced woman stepped out. A ripple of recognition ran through the crowd. "It's the Water Thousand Moons Sage," many whispered. She was Shui Qianyue, ranked 8th on the Holy List. Ye Tian looked at her and felt a rush of astonishment, not because of her looks, but because of her talent. Title: Water Thousand Moons, Cultivation Talent, Huiyue level, Ice Affinity, Peak, Speed Talent, Advanced, Defense Talent, Pseudo-Upanishads, 40%. What a heaven-defying talent, Ye Tian murmured, astonished. Her cultivation was only at the Huiyue level, but she also possessed a Pseudo-Upanishads level defensive talent, along with top-tier ice aptitude and high-speed talent, almost no weaknesses at all. No wonder she ranked 8th on the Holy List. A Pseudo-Upanishads defensive talent with a 40% affinity for Upanishads defense, she could clearly comprehend that technique. She must have established a perfect foundation, though not by my method. Did she force the foundation with some special treasure? Without a word, Ye Tian copied Shui Qianyue's Huiyue-level cultivation talent and her Pseudo-Upanishads defensive talent. Good, he thought, amused. On impulse, he sent her 2 excellent talent tokens. Shui Qianyue, unaware of the anonymous gift, departed amid everyone's admiring and respectful looks. "I'll go home first to fuse the talents, then come back to study the sword meaning," she announced as she left. Ye Tian turned and headed home. Chapter 140. Back home, Ye Tian set about fusing the Radiant Moon Huiyue cultivation talent with the Pseudo-Upanishads defensive talent. It didn't take long, but the work left him drenched in sweat. When he checked the results, his Huiyue cultivation talent was unchanged, still Huiyue level. To raise it, he would have to copy another Huiyue level talent, which wasn't urgent and could be done later. The defensive talent, however, had shifted. Where it had read Defense Talent, Pseudo-Upanishads 3%, after incorporating Shui Qianyue's defensive skill, it now read Pseudo-Upanishads 60%, Ye Tian muttered. That's stronger than Shui Qianyue's own pseudo-mystical defensive talent, but it's not 70%. He sighed. If he thought about it carefully, Ye Tian knew it couldn't be perfect. This was a fusion, not a simple stacking of talents, so some loss was inevitable. Reaching 60% of the Pseudo-Upanishads defensive talent was already more than he had dared hope for. All right, test the amplification at 60%, he told himself. He ran the tests quickly. To his surprise, 60% of the Pseudo-Upanishads defensive talent produced a 50-fold amplification. His defensive multiplier, which had been 35 times, leapt to 50 times. Ye Tian grinned. My defenses just got a huge boost. Satisfied, he rested a few hours, then returned to the God of War Tower. He entered the sacred chamber of the God of War monument and once more used the monument to meditate on sword meaning. Time passed differently inside that space. 30 days slipped by in an instant. When he opened his eyes, a bright joy filled him. 70% sword comprehension, he murmured. The improvement came from the Moon Enlightenment God of War monument. Reaching 70% of the sword intent meant he was already qualified to cultivate gold-level sword techniques, a huge threshold that many naturally gifted swordsmen never attain. Ye Tian had somehow reached it. If he'd relied on slow, solitary practice and sudden enlightenment, he had no idea how long it would have taken to hit 70%. With the help of the God of War monument, he'd done it in a month. If you get the chance, find a gold-level sword technique to cultivate, the spirit of the instrument advised. When his points ran out, Ye Tian's expression darkened. He couldn't stay inside the monument's space any longer. Stepping back into the open, he asked the spirit of the instrument, "Is there any other way to earn points besides clearing the God of War Tower's 33rd floor challenge?" He needed a lot more points, and he couldn't rely on those challenges alone. Ye Tian felt a twinge of curiosity. If the God of War monument's enlightenment space was the only way to spend points, then it didn't make sense that so many people could afford to participate. There had to be other ways to earn points, ways he didn't yet know. "Yes, they can be transferred," someone answered. "Everyone can transfer their points to others, and you can receive transfers as well." "So you can buy and sell points?" Ye Tian asked, hope flaring. Jiling shook his head. The God of War Tower doesn't buy or sell points. Transfers are possible, but they're done privately. Whether someone is willing to transfer points to you depends entirely on your skills and what you can offer. Suddenly it clicked for Ye Tian. The tower itself had no market for points, but that didn't stop disciples of powerful sects from trading them behind the scenes. A large force could cultivate dozens, even hundreds, of low-tier king-level disciples, one-star kings or ordinary king-level practitioners, and then have each of them break through into the first layer. Even if each breakthrough only yielded a single point, multiplied by dozens of disciples, that quickly added up. He pictured it now: private arrangements, favors exchanged, skilled fighters trading their combat prowess or resources for point transfers. The God of War Tower provided the mechanic of enlightenment and point spending, but the generation and redistribution of points could be engineered outside of it by those with the means. Ye Tian's initial confusion eased. The monument's rules were straightforward. The complexity came from the world beyond it, from what powerful sects could manufacture and sell discreetly. That explained why so many people seemed able to afford the enlightenment space after all. If you sign a contract with one of the major powers in advance, they'll supply most of the points, the instrument spirit explained. Big factions simply have far more points than individuals. You could also exchange high-value treasures with someone who has points, but those trades only happen for extremely precious items others will actually want in return for their points. That's not an option for someone like you. Ye Tian frowned. "Is there any other way to earn points?" "There's only one other method," the spirit said. "It's called the record system. The God of War monument has a hidden points program. Any warrior who breaks a record on the monument receives a corresponding number of points, and the rewards are substantial." A hidden points system? Ye Tian's interest was piqued. Maybe this was his chance. The spirit manifested a virtual screen in front of Ye Tian. Lines of text and numbers appeared, displaying the monument's records and the points awarded for surpassing each one. King-level strongest attack record, king-level strongest defense record, king-level top speed record, fastest king-level advancement record. Ye Tian idly clicked the fastest advancement entry and stared at the name on the screen. From first king-level acupoint to all 365 acupoints opened and reaching the king-level apex in 80 days. 80 days to clear the entire king level? Ye Tian was speechless. "Jiling, did Wangzhe really do this in 80 days? Are you sure that's right?" Jiling answered, "It's accurate, but he didn't advance the usual way. Someone forced his progress with special methods, burning through his potential. He hasn't been back to the God of War Tower in decades. Ah, Ye Tian understood. The record hadn't been achieved by normal cultivation at all, but by a powerful backer who sacrificed the king's long-term potential to catapult him forward, break the record, and rake in a huge number of points. It wasn't necessarily one-sided cruelty. Perhaps both parties had agreed to it, and both stood to gain. Still, Ye Tian felt the record was untouchable. On the screen, a line of text glowed like a verdict. King-level strongest attack record, 8.2, Dragon Force. The name hit him like a jolt. Lin Jian, the founder of the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall, the Tomahawk Emperor. That was his true name. No wonder someone who held that record could become the first emperor of the Zhonghai Superbase. Awe and curiosity warred in Ye Tian. What exactly was an 8.2 Dragon Force? He turned to the instrumental spirit and asked, voice tight with interest, Instrumental spirit, explain this to me. What does an 8.2 Dragon Force mean in terms of power? The spirit said, Dragon power isn't literally the strength of a dragon. It's a unit of measurement. The dragon clan started using dragon power to describe their might, and many other intelligent races among the ferocious beasts adopted it as well. Nowadays, anything above the holy level is usually measured in dragon power rather than in elephant power. Elephant power is too low-end and inconvenient. The conversion is simple. 1 dragon power equals the power of 1,000,000 elephants. 1 dragon power equals the strength of 1,000,000 elephants, Ye Tian blurted. So I don't even have the power of a single dragon? He was horrified. He began running the numbers in his head. Even if his physical strength reached the extreme of the king level, how many dragon power would his attack actually amount to? The result left him stunned.